Boys and... Great start. Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see this our town of Halloween. It's been one of those years. How's it going, everyone? Can you even hear me? There's a chance you can't. Also, this chat window keeps disappearing when I'm not looking at it, which seems to be in its mind almost all the time. There we go, that's better. Hello! Did you miss me? I can never remember the expressions on this damn thing. One of these is the right one. Oh well. Look at my face. Look at it go. But hello, Skyla, Sierra and Wolfie, Tech, Lulzy, Pink, Common Zero, and I think that's... What the... There's a... I don't know where this came from. Press the E key to spawn this tablet. Okay. I didn't want that. Hello, Mystic, and Draynar as well. Oof. Already getting tangled, are we? Oh. Of course I am. I perfectly position everything and then still find a way. Hi. To fuck it all up. It's so cold. I mean, of course it is. The winter chill is finally starting to settle in. The mild fall season is coming to a close. But happy Halloween. The best time of year. The best. You've fallen asleep 3 times already, but I was too curious to see what the silly spooter had in store today. Alas, nothing spectacular. It's been a rough year. Actually, honestly, it's been a rough few years for me. What with the, murder and all. So, truth be told, I'm running out of steam. You might ask yourselves, I thought that this was all like spooky month, Kate. I thought this was all part of the bit. Like spooky month, that's the only time of year there's lore. It takes a lot of energy to maintain a disguise for 365 days. I'm more than capable of looking normal again. I assure you of that. It's just that it takes a lot of energy. I'm still dead. Ghost magic. It's all part of the fucking presentation. But it's been rough. I don't have as much energy as I used to. I can't keep this up year-round anymore. Some might be wondering what's going on with that. especially with Spooky Month this year. I've spread myself quite thin. And I've admittedly been very tired. Keeping the bid up for an entire year? Oh my, I only have a small amount of energy. I'm a ghost. I'm dead. Technically speaking, I should only be here during that one time of year. But I've been breaking that rule. And, I think I'm at my limit. Hello, Noipale, Shady, Kayla, and Moonlight. The little guy has been doing most of the heavy lifting for the last half of this year. We met not that long ago, if you'd believe it. Only about a year ago. I don't even know where he came from. He just kind of stumbled into my place one day. At that point, well, I was already dead. Are they going to drag you back? Never. Never. I don't think he's spawned. It seems like he just doesn't really feel comfortable talking about it. Although I'm under the impression he's been trying to figure out a way to do so. It's not really my place to pry. I got my own issues, with being, dead. What are we talking about? We're talking about, advanced calculus. We're talking about calculus. Do you understand calculus, ya boy? Do you understand it? You understand how complex it is and how difficult it would be for me to go back and re-explain it all to you if you missed it? I'm talking about the whole being dead thing, as one might say. Exactly. You got it. Hello, Score. But no. As I've been saying, I've been scarce this year. Both during the spooky month, but otherwise as well. I've kind of handed, temporarily, the reins over to the little guy. He's great. He's pretty funny, honestly. I think he's a good fit. I haven't talked about this with him yet, but as I said, truth be told, I can't really do this anymore. I expended a lot of my energy trying to keep up appearances after dying the first time. And then even afterward, last year, I continued trying to cling to things and hang in there. And about halfway through the year, I just needed a break. And, I can't maintain the stream all year round anymore. I'm stretching myself thin. As much as it pains me to say. With that in mind, you'll still see me next year, of course. I'm not that easy to dispose of. But I think I'm going to be handing the reins over to the little guy. I haven't really talked to him about it yet. He's aware I'm doing stuff. He's preparing his own setup. But he's kind of been under the impression that he's sort of part-time. You know, that he'll be here sometimes, I'll be here sometimes. When the reality of the matter is he will be here all the time. We had a good run. We really did. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. It's been 3 years. 3 years since this journey started for me. It's a bittersweet feeling, having to move on like this. Hello, Shadow. I would say yes, the Jester is going to be carrying on in my stead. I've got plans. The time will come where he will let you know the date. And you can be sure that I will give you a proper goodbye before I leave. But, as everyone's favorite spooky spider, and the one that everyone comes to expect the big spectacle from every year, I'd like to extend a personal, heartfelt apology. Because let's be real, this year has been terrible in terms of Spooky Month shenanigans. We did a rerun of my exact same opener from last year. Are you fucking kidding me? If I had it my way, I would have done something different. Again, the spectral energy is beginning to dwindle beyond safe levels. Alas, I cannot finish Keeper. I just do not have the energy. You should play it yourselves, though. Consider it a sampling so that you can give it a try, see if you like it. In any case, it's All Hallows Eve. I don't have anything big planned today, unfortunately. More just discussing the future. I still don't know who's responsible. Actually, you know what? Let me be honest. I think I have an idea of who did this. But that's not anyone else's business. My post-mortem affairs, you should say, are my own business. Don't go out there getting yourselves stabbed too for poking your noses where it doesn't belong. And is that a vampire bat? Hello? Hello, everybody. My name is Spirit. I'm a peacock spider. And it's fucking Halloween! You were playing 10 Bells. What the fuck is that? What is... Explain to me what 10 Bells is. Elaborate. English Pub Exit 8. I don't know how the hell you managed to string together a bunch of different words that would normally not make sense, but that makes perfect sense, and I know exactly what you mean. It's fucking At Worlds and Observation Duty. Is that about right? Is that another good summary of it? And how did that go? Let me put you in front of me so I can actually look at you properly. Yeah. There we are. Dude, I've been so back into... I'm on observation duty again. It is good. It's one of my personal favorites, honestly. I used to think when it first came out, I was like, it's okay. But as it's progressed, it's only gotten better. Then, boy, you're going to have to wait. I'm in the middle of VR. I'll grab water when I can. I've changed the lid out on my bottle. It's no longer a little sippy straw. I actually have to take the lid off and drink it like that. I get more water that way, but it also means I'm more likely to spill it everywhere. You've been so... yeah. But, I'm looking forward to the sequel. We played the demo a few weeks ago. The channel points are different. It's not webbing anymore, is it? I'm feeling very wistful today, if I'm honest. There's a change in the air. Things won't be the same after this. And I hate to say goodbye. I really do. But trust me. Trust me. You're in good hands. You're in capable hands. Little hands, but capable hands. I had to lean in to look at that. What did you do to his emote? You crushed him. That does remind me as well. For those of you worried about Fritter, do not. We've been hanging out. He's fine. He's been taking a well-deserved sabbatical. And I know that might seem like, wow, he's been gone a while, hasn't he? Yes, he has. He has been gone a while. But rest assured, he's been hanging out in the background with us. And, well, I can't help but get the feeling that he wants to stay behind. The initial plan was he was going to come with me. But he's expressed some doubts on that one. Foster and Flapjacked. Yes, actually. They mentioned them as well. I haven't gotten to speak with them as much, if I'm honest. However, I've gotten an impression that, between you and me, you might be seeing them again soon as well. Who knows? They've expressed interest in having further involvement in what Fritter's been up to. Funny that they took this long to do it. It's been 3 years since their little adventure. For those who don't know, Fritter has 2 friends. They're also flies. Foster's a cook, and, as I recall, Flapjack, works out. One could ask, what's the lore on that? I don't fucking know, man. That's a very weird thing to ask about, like, living people. Stretch? Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm nothing but fucking... It's an exoskeleton with a spirit inside. You really think I have muscles to fucking exercise? I'll do it anyway, but... Yeah. Welcome on in, Jax. And now I will hydrate. Goodness. So I just got insulation installed in my apartment in the attic yesterday. To break kayfabe here. As if there was ever any kayfabe. Smoke and mirrors. Spectral magic. But yeah, apparently for the last several years, I've been living in an apartment with no insulation in the attic. So as a result, it's been extremely cold in the winter and extremely hot in the summer. And temperature changes within the building do not stick very well because the heat escapes during winter, as does the cooler air. Is that... Not sure if you know about the mouth movement in that. That's my mouth. What do you mean if it's multiple planes? That's my mouth. That's just my mouth. What a weird question to ask. Who asks someone about their mouth like that? Strange. There's an owl out there somewhere that might have an answer for you. I might also know, but perhaps you should direct your questions to them. Hello, Flame Shake. Almost 500k, one day, burn points for no reward. You bring up an excellent thing. So here's the thing. I actually had plans to add redeems like that today, or potentially make a big spectacle out of it. Alas, as I have told you, my energy is running out. I can only hang on so much longer. So I don't really have the energy to make any more big, flashy events for you. If people are interested, because honestly, as someone who's been here for 3 years, and I'm about to hand the keys over, so to speak, might not be a bad idea for us all to reset the slate back to 0. Resetting channel points to the very beginning, so everyone is starting fresh. It'll be up to the little guy to come up with stuff for you to spend it on, though. I know he's been working on one thing. 2 things, actually. But we are alike in many ways, including the fact that we don't like getting interrupted. Chat. Y'all, in your desperate efforts to not interrupt me while I'm talking, to time your redeems during gaps in conversation, what you manage to do instead is time it perfectly to interrupt me after the gap is over. Trying to time it only makes your interruptions more precise. Everyone in here complaining, oh no, my 134k points, my 350k, my 460k, weak, all of you. Kayla, I demand right now, Kayla, tell them the total. Put them in their place. Kayla's been here since before the spider, in the dark times. Before VTubing was even a thing. Yes, you have, but Kayla's been present more, so they've earned more points. And that's totally fine. That wasn't meant to be a judgment. Y'all are taking this awfully personally. There we go. 1,729,537 channel points. Beat that. We don't speak that name in this house. Well, let's get off this beach, shall we? Oh. What a beautiful place this is, but enough of that. Spooky. Ah, this is much more my speed. A graveyard. I can never frame the camera very well. I know photography and cinematography rules, of course, but I'll be real with you. Attempting to get the camera in a good position, especially when I move around a lot, is a pain in the ass. And watch, it's going to be anchored to the world now. Oh no, it is anchored to me. Excellent. Ghosts, pumpkins, and trees, and graves as well. Wait a minute. For a moment, it looked like a mini golf course, and I was going to lose it. The little railings on the sides of all the pathways. I want to delete it because it's a problem I've faced for a while as well, chat. It's a problem I've faced and the imp has been facing. How do you balance the costs for certain kinds of redeems if a large portion of the viewer base have so many points that the cost isn't a problem? The rich get richer. There are plenty of people in the chat that have more than enough channel points to just burn it on it every single time it's available. If we're to balance rewards for people hanging out and watching the stream, then one needs to reset the scales so that everyone is starting on an even playing field. Especially if we want to include ones that don't have a long cooldown, because then people can be redeeming it literally every minute for the entire stream, and that's the quickest way to make a redeem disappear, because you've abused it. The hardest part is coming up with redeems and interactions with the stream that don't disrupt the stream itself. We've tried many different things. I've had a few fun ones, but unfortunately they were all very disruptive. The one where you stuck me in a fucking paper cup and dragged me out of frame? Extract the spooter? You realize how disruptive that is to my gaming? I have to press the pause button and then do a fucking improv comedy bit in the fucking middle of whatever else I'm doing. We used to have a fucking, oh my god, we used to have a Homestuck redeem where we just read some Homestuck, but people had so many channel points, you clowns redeemed it at the beginning of every stream and it started having an issue. My voice started to suffer for it. You realize how long it takes Hussy to get to the fucking point? He runs his mouth for fucking years and years on frivolous bullshit in that goddamn webcomic. I was tearing my voice asunder, so out the door it went. We used to have sound redeems, but they were often disruptive. Pussed out like a bitch. Good old Takahata. I still yearn for burning my points on a pointless, noiseless redeem. The problem is I don't know how to make it so certain redeems don't show up as redeems in the chat. That's a problem I've had watching Kaz's streams. When Kazi streams, sometimes people will toss him all over the place like a fucking sack of potatoes. And then the chat is just yeet, 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 yeet. Like messages? You want to talk? You want to interact with the chat or the streamer? Nope. Yeet. What other redeems did we have over the years? There was the one that Cowboat keeps wanting to come back, which is the Wii Bowling Strike. He liked that one so much, he always brings it up whenever I'm talking about adding channel point stuff to the stream. Problem is, it was, again, very disruptive. The plan that the imp seems to have, I like a lot. There's going to be... Some games don't require that much like emotional investment, like Power Wash Simulator, or like a roguelike, or something goofy, you know? Something that's not like a story-focused experience, or a game, you know, ones that were not like invested in the narrative. And when that's the case, redeems that might be a bit more disruptive to the stream are fine, you know? Because they're not interrupting the core experience of the gameplay, it's just people futzing around with toys in the background. But if there are streams or games going on with a focus on narrative, or where the streamer happens to be invested in what's going on, then those redeems will be turned off. Redeems are distracting, unfortunately. They're very distracting, and if you don't come up with a significant list of things for people to spend their points on, they will end up, as we can clearly see, with an insurmountable, unconscionable amount of them, where once redeems do get added, they're constantly using that one, and there's no, like, balancing. I've got some ideas as well. Octa had some really cool redeem concepts. I haven't seen Octa stream in a while, but they used to have some good ones where if you hit a certain threshold, you would earn a one-time reward. I have which was basically a custom sound effect only for you. Sound effects are disruptive, so maybe not, but I'm thinking of something else. I'll have to run it by the imp and see. Yeah, Octa has been on hiatus. I miss Octa as well. I do. Octa's the reason that we do this. Octa was the one who inspired me to be being this spectacular spooky guy. It was Octa's original Beetlejuice theme from all the way back in 2021 that I saw them post on Twitter that inspired me to start my Spooky Month stuff, and what eventually culminated in what you see now. The problem, Pink, is that's also disruptive, because if you're a 3D model, you have to stop what you're doing, go into VC Face, go into the drop-down menu, grab the image that the chat member suggested, upload it into the folder, click on it, place it on the model where the person wanted, and then get back to playing. That's wildly disruptive. About on par for the other ones that we had, like Extract the Spooter and Homestuck. Oh my goodness. The Mega Man ones were pretty good, but they sadly broke after some file relocating. And also because the Twitch Integrated Throwing System, or colloquially known as TITS, is no longer functioning. However, now that I have better understandings and knowledge of how SAMI and motion tracking in OBS works, I can share that with the imp, and I think we'll be able to make everything work within OBS without needing exterior or external software. Hello, Alexander. VR chat goes well. Hello, Lauren, as well. Welcome on in. Sticky note redeem. I don't know what a sticky note redeem is. Though it also doesn't help that neither me or the imp watch a lot of other content. Little known fact. I have owned this, magic mirror for a very long time. That's how I'm communicating with all of you. That's the medium through which I communicate and entertain. But I don't really connect to other magic mirrors very often to see what others are doing. It's not, honestly, in where I come from, it ain't very common. Again, it depends. Giving the chat the ability to put a piece of text on screen already exists in the form of the chat messages. Giving them that kind of ability feels like it's rife for abuse. People thinking they're funny and then doing something they shouldn't. There's a very fine, delicate balance here where we can give you things to entertain yourselves with without it being disruptive. That's the other problem. I, and the imp by extension, don't really want to do, what would you call it? I like to call it the Subway Surfer effect. It's the Subway Surfer effect. And that is, chat, look at the jingly keys. Look at the jingly keys. Jingly, jingly. Here's a little fishing mini game, chat. Look at the little fishing mini game. Oh my gosh. Fishing mini game. Also, look at your little blorbos, chat. They're running back and forth. Throw bombs at each other. Look at the little blorbos. Nothing against people who use them, but they feel to me the equivalent of putting a Subway Surfer gameplay underneath a TikTok. It's like it's like a ploy to keep your attention when it shouldn't be needed. Eerie. I'm not repeating that. I hate repeating myself. Happy Halloween, Sequoir. Happy Halloween. Alas, we're not going to be doing a VR community night this year for Spooky Month. I do apologize. Again, the spectral energy is running low. Excuse you? I just got a random friend request from someone named Splash Lemon with a picture of what I can't tell if that's meatloaf. I don't know, it's a white guy with a bandana and a fucking goatee. And there's text that says good time wishes for all. The number one rule you should understand with me is do not send me unsolicited friend requests. I don't like being put in a position where I have to say no. And I also don't like people thinking that they can just like, oh, we talked one time, we're friends now, and then expect me to add them on Discord. Discord's for people I know very well. VR chat is for people that I've interacted with enough to know are trustworthy to not be a nuisance when I'm in VR. Been watching Halloween movies most of the day. Nice. We watched Coraline with Kazzy on their community night last weekend. That was my first time seeing Coraline. Fucking phenomenal movie. I'm sad it took me fucking like, what, it came out in 2009? Took me like fucking 14 years to watch it? No, 16 years. The Mouth of Madness. In the Mouth of Madness. Is that the one with Sam Neill? The guy from Jurassic Park? I haven't seen the movie, but I think I know the one you're referring to. Ah, yeah. I don't watch a lot of horror. You'd be surprised. Video games have a different structure to how they present their spooks and scares. Oftentimes, movies are they can be very gory at times, and I'm not really a gore guy. I don't like gore and blood and viscera. There's exceptions in that rule depending on the movie. The Thing is one of those exceptions because it's very obviously practical effects and it is otherwise a fucking phenomenal psychological horror movie. Where did the Halloween spirit go? I've been sitting outside for an hour and only seen 13 kids in total. They were all dressed up as Christmas characters. I don't know. Hocus Pocus is a good choice. I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. You can't stop the things I do. I ain't lying. Been 300 years, right down to the day. Now this witch is back, and there's hell to pay. Ah. I put a spell on you, and now you're I'm not gonna... Look, I'm not Bette Midler, man. I'm not fucking Bette Midler. Can't do it. But Hocus Pocus is a great movie. I am also biased for Beetlejuice. I haven't seen the sequel. Still. There's a lot of classic... Yeah, like, considering my spooky credentials, I don't watch horror movies, like I've said. A lot of my knowledge of horror movie media comes from, like, either people talking about movies on YouTube, like James A. Janice, who does Dead Meat and The Kill Count, because it's the only way I can stomach movies that have a significant amount of gore and you know, blood and death. It's also very hard to find good horror movies that really scratch the itch that I need them to scratch. I don't think I would call it a horror movie, but Annihilation is a great one that I would think fits the vibe of a horror movie, despite being more of like a thriller. I would also say, one I would like to watch at some point, just to push through it, because I think it would be amazing, is Nope, by, oh god, is it Jordan Peele? I fucking forget his first name, and I feel like a clown. Good horror movie leans into terror. It's the nightmare that slips into your brain, whispering about every corner. It makes you think. It leaves you with dread. Jordan Peele? Got it. There we go. What other horror movies? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I would love to see, like, Happy Death Day. It's violent and gory in places, but it's also, like, black comedy. It's got an interesting premise. I'd like to watch that. Cloverfield's a good one, but I know it ain't for everybody. The original, not once they ruined it with all the fucking goddamn sequel nonsense. Oh yeah, no, the original Halloween I'm sure is good. Like, ones that have, like, restraint tend to be good. I've long said this, that if I were to ever do anything with Harkin properly, I think the best medium, the best way to tell Harkin's story would be a fucking slasher movie. He's a threat that disappears from the story for 20 years, comes back bitter and angry and seeking revenge. The exact kind of perfect setup that a lot of spooky, like, fucking slasher movies tend to go with. But it would be an interesting angle because most of those spooky movies don't make the fucking slasher killer a sympathetic character. And while Harkin definitely is a bastard, his anger is justified. You're talking about Cloverfield Lane, right? With John Goodman? Tech, the sequel for Cloverfield? I've heard that one's good. That one seems like a stressful one to watch. I don't know what it is. In a video game, I have, like, agency, even if the game, like, traps me in a position and makes me suffer something spooky. For the most part, video games give me a level of agency over what is taking place that they don't freak me out as much. But, like, a movie like Cloverfield Lane, where the whole thing is not so much supernatural horror and, like, until later, it's just, this man is terrifying. It's like, it's too real. His level of violence and threat is too real. It's grounded in reality in a way that makes it really harrowing, and I struggle sometimes to like, consume harrowing movies. A movie that I wouldn't say is a horror movie, but I like the vibe. People say this movie is bad. It's been a while since I've watched it, but if I recall correctly, this movie fucking ruled. It was Van Helsing. The Van Helsing movie specifically with Hugh Jackman, where he was, like, basically supernatural James Bond working with the Vatican to hunt down supernatural creatures. He fucking hunted down, like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for some reason. But there was Frankenstein's monster was in it, Dracula was in it, werewolves were in it. That movie fucking rules. That movie's awesome. Like one of the hardest lines in the movie. It's just like, they're figuring stuff out, and then it's like, in the name of God, open this door. Like, that movie fucking rules, okay? Unironically, he's got a fucking automatic, like, machine gun crossbow. And when he's fighting these vampire ladies, he runs to a church, dips the crossbow in holy water, and just goes boom, 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 boom. And it's so fucking good. It's such a good movie. Like, it doesn't have to be fucking, like, I think it's perfectly campy. Just enough of it takes itself seriously, and the rest of it is kind of like, this is ridiculous. But it's good. It's fun. History has recognized the Van Helsing movie is good. Excellent. Bring back the whimsy. Things can be... That's what the difference between spooky and scary. And how they can overlap. Spooky is something more campy. It's not necessarily, like, not scary, but it's usually lighthearted. Dancing skeletons, jack-o'-lanterns, sheet ghosts, and fluttering bats and spiders. Spooky would be things like, you know, Beetlejuice, or that Van Helsing movie. Scary is leaning much more into the realm of, you know, let's see, Paranormal Activity 1, the rest of them are bad. Paranormal Activity 1, what other movies would be good as a good example for that? Alien would be scary, obviously. Halloween. Friday the 13th. Spooky would be Monster House. Scary would be the Haunting of Hill House. What would the title of a slasher movie with Harkin as the slasher? I don't know what I would call it. That's not something I've thought out yet. I've thought out, like, the plot, but I don't know what I would name the film. The Thing would be scary, yes. The original Poltergeist, scary, yes. Nightmare Before Christmas, spooky. Coraline, that one I think is a decent crossover. It's mostly spooky, but it has enough elements of scary to make it a really good movie. It's a good scary movie for kids. It's compelling and still treats its viewer with respect. It treats you as if you were a person with intellect and doesn't just treat you like an idiot. And it doesn't coddle you just because the movie was made for a younger audience. It does not hold back on fucking doing freaky shit. So Coraline's a good crossover between the two. What's another good crossover? I wouldn't say Monster House, because Monster House is kind of goofy. Even at its, like, air quotes, scariest moments, I still think Monster House is a spooky movie. But the hard part about picking a movie for a spooky watch together is specifically that there are people that are not comfortable with certain kinds of horror. It's very... Excuse you. You're in my face. Shoo. Thank you. Okay. Hi, nobody. Welcome on in. Happy Halloween. Any Don Bluth animated film is, I guess you could say, spooky. Let me think. The Secret of Nim is definitely more like, it's serious in tone, though. I wouldn't say it's actually a scary movie or a spooky movie. It's just got, like, I would say that a lot of his art direction for those movies can be spooky adjacent. They're definitely dark. What is it? The Great Owl? Never seen together. Don't even know about that one. Fantasy adventure, yes. It's got eerie elements, but I don't think it's specifically a spooky or scary movie. It's like you could say the Brave Little Toaster scared kids as well, but I wouldn't put it in either of those categories either. Just because it has that one moment with the clown, and then the There goes the sun, here comes the night. Somebody turn on a light. Somebody tell me that fate has been kind. You can't go now, you are out of your mind. Like, it's not really a scary movie. It has spooky moments, but it's not a scary movie or a spooky movie. Black Cauldron, I would also disagree. I would say that there is a moment that is very scary, but I would not say that it is a movie you would put in a scary or spooky category, because it is just one moment in the film that is scary, where the rest of it is just fantasy adventure in Care Dalbin with fucking Taryn and the rest of the cast, and fucking Gurgi with his munchings and his crunchings. Scary Godmother would be spooky. I would also say Hocus Pocus, spooky. Black Cauldron is scary in one moment, and that is when the Horned King is killed and drawn into the cauldron. It is an extremely visceral, very disturbing scene, at least for the time in which the movie was released. And considering it was marketed to kids, it's part of the reason that the movie did so poorly. It scared the daylights out of children. Where he's pulled into the cauldron and all his fucking flesh is ripped off, and then his skeleton's sucked inside. Terrifying. I think you are measuring other people's fear of something based on your own. I would still say it was pretty freaky. Let's see. But yeah, like I said, spooky and scary are different categories. They can overlap, but most of the time I would say they're separate. Spooky's more whimsical. Scary's more like, you know, grounded, so to speak. Maybe not grounded, but it's serious. Whimsical and serious. I only know as much as I know about Black Cauldron after watching the Game Grumps play the fucking Sierra adventure game covering the first book. That's the only reason I know the words Care Dalbin. What's some other good shit? Again, like, I'm not much of a movie aficionado, otherwise. I'm also very picky, and getting me to sit down to watch anything is also a challenge. Cal can attest. It's not that I wouldn't be interested in watching Dune, it's just that I'd almost never have the energy to watch a movie. Movies don't really, like, I have to sit there and sit still and watch something and not do anything else. You realize how much I fucking hate doing that? I gotta multitask, and if I multitask, I stop absorbing what's happening in the movie. Plus, again, like in a video game, I have agency, whereas in movies, especially horror movies, I have no control, and I'm just along for the ride, no matter where the plot goes. Heard good things about Corpse Bride, never saw it. Most of Tim Burton's work, I would say, falls in more in the spooky category. Yeah, Corpse Bride, Nightmare Before Christmas, fucking, I haven't seen Sweeney Todd. I would still say it's more spooky, and that's because it's a musical. Just because he's a serial killer doesn't mean it's not still spooky rather than scary, because the fucking murder's being juxtaposed by the fucking musical numbers. You have a wonderful night, Shiny, and happy Halloween. What do you mean wait. No. Hold on. What the fuck do you mean Garth Marenghi's return? Huh? You're meaning to tell me that Garth Marenghi's Dark Place is back? That we have more? What is going on with my face? That is weird. Garth Marenghi is back. How is he back? In what way? What is that? What is that? I don't know what that is. His first video is directing real-life horror director Mike Flanagan while he's in character. That is crazy. I wouldn't say Terminator is spooky, no. I would not put it in spooky or scary. It is a thriller. It is not. It is an action thriller. It is not a horror or spooky adjacent movie. It has a scary scene in it with the nuclear explosion killing Sarah Connor, but that's it. Interviewing. Sippy time. I need water. Maximum Overdrive is just a bad movie, but I would say it's spooky. I haven't seen it, but I've heard enough about it to know it's bad. It's based on the short story Trucks. We literally just said that. The first Terminator is not a horror movie, in my opinion. I've seen it. I wouldn't call it a horror movie. Action thriller. It's not presented. Oh, Jeepers Creepers? Where'd you get those peepers? Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those eyes? I haven't seen them. I know that they're kind of campy, though. Most of the sequels end up being bad. What others? I still stand by the first Paranormal Activity movie. They obviously jumped the shark after a certain point, but I think the first two actually were pretty good. They scared me. Back in the day, anyway. Yeah, and T2 was the nuke. Yes, correct. Twin Peaks I haven't watched all the way through. I couldn't give you a judgment. All I will tell you is that it was so bleak that when I was watching it earlier this year, I couldn't stick around for it. It was just, I was going through some shit, man. My spectral energy, as I've told you, is draining. It was too bleak for me. Evil Dead is definitely spooky. I heard the first one was scary. Or at least a crossover, a pretty decent crossover of both, but I know that the sequels are full-blown camp with Bruce Campbell. So Evil Dead's definitely spooky, full stop, after the first one. Shop smart, shop S-smart. What other? Oh, The Mist. The movie. Full-blown scary. Hard to rewatch, though, because it's just like, oh, man, humanity were the real monsters all along. Wake me the fuck up when you have something more interesting to say. I know the movie's based on a book that's old. It's a good movie. It's a good movie. The Mist is one of Stephen King's best. It's just, I'm so sick of horror movies being like, oh, the real evil were people. It's like, no shit. The last fucking 5 years have proven to me that the real evil is people. That doesn't mean that people aren't inherently good at heart. I'm so tired of it just being like, oh, humanity's nature is that of evil. No, it's not. It's tiring. All right? Just because I'm the spooky guy doesn't mean I can't have optimistic whimsy. I believe in the beautiful future. Those with callous hearts are the minority. They just happen to have the loudest voices, doing their best to convince you that the majority of the people around you suck, when the good outnumber the bad tenfold, maybe 100-fold. Rubber, isn't that that is the movie with the evil tire, the evil car tire. That's spooky. That's as campy. Yep, there's a movie where an evil car tire goes on a killing spree. Yeah. Of course there is a scary movie about a car tire. Of course. The Crow. Never seen The Crow. Roshan, happy Halloween. Can I get a shout out for Roshan, please? What a treat. How are you doing? Your last playing Little Nightmares 2. Good taste. I wanted to play the third one this year, but I had heard less than stellar things about it. But how you doing? You're chilling? You're chilling. Love your little spooky PNG. They're like, bleh. They're like the vampire. It was great. But yeah, please go support Roshan, fellow VTuber. Sweetheart. It's a very chill Halloween today, everyone. A very chill Halloween. Movies that I could say were spooky? I want to say Hellboy and Hellboy 2, but I think they're not really horror movies, you know? More spooky than scary. Yeah, I wouldn't even necessarily call them spooky movies because they're because they're more like action thrillers, you know? Arbitrary designations. What about horror mystery like the recent Poirot? I have not seen it. The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. Not Fraser. Brendan Fraser. And God, I don't remember the rest of the actors. With Emotep and like, yeah, that movie was I think that crosses over. I think it's a mix of spooky and scary. It's got plenty of campy moments, and plenty of moments that I think to this very day still make my fucking skin crawl. Also, Technomancer with the fucking raid. Hello, everybody. My name is Spirit, and I'm a spooky peacock spider. And we're doing one last hurrah for Halloween! We're talking about horror movies. How was the update for Voices of the Void? No spoilers now. I haven't played it yet. And honestly, at this point, I'm kind of waiting until VOTV updates significantly because I keep getting through the story mode and then it's like I got nothing left to do. Is this your first time playing it? You were here before? Awesome. Gotcha. Voices of the Void is fabulous. Never seen Deep Blue Sea. What's another horror movie? I don't know. I can't think of any. Again, I don't watch spooky. I don't watch movies. I don't have the attention span. Mega Man Xander, thank you for the resub. Oh my goodness. But the Mummy movies, the first one is definitely a crossover between spooky and scary. The second one is full-blown, like, fucking camp at that point. Final Destination is one of the movies that I think... It has an interesting idea, but it goes on far too long. You know? They're also extremely gory, which makes them hard for me to watch. But Techno, don't feel obligated to stick around. Go ahead and hop out if you need to. Thank you again for that raid. Hope you enjoyed Voices of the Void. Let me think. Happy Spooky Day. Halloween. Where are you guys? There you are. I've never heard of Splinter before either. Classic Universal, never watched Classic Universal horror. I've never seen Come and See. Haven't seen that one either. I'm really grasping at straws to find other, like, horror movies that people talk about a lot. And I fucking watched The Kill Count. Oh, The Ring. I've never seen The Ring. I don't even know if it's good. Like, I would assume it's good. It was fucking clearly influential. Never seen Scanners or Videodrome either. Or Gremlins. Haven't seen Gremlins either. Or The Grudge. I've heard a lot of good things about them, though. Let me think. There was something I was going to say, and I lost it. Killer Clowns is definitely a crossover. I would say it's mostly campy. It's spooky. It's more of a bloodbath. I wouldn't really even... Oh, my goodness. Woof. The exoskeleton, it's creaky. Ah, my legs. Yeah. Hello, Mickey. Never seen Black Sheep? I don't know these movies, but I was trying to think of one. I was thinking of one. What was it? There's a good short film on YouTube called The Ledge that fucking stuck with me. Oof. These legs. I think I'm gonna need to sit down, actually. Ooh. Yeah. Oh my god. Get over here. Ugh. I'm gonna have to move the chat window as well now. Good lord. Welcome to the spooky graveyard. Can't stay long because I'm not supposed to be here right now. Yeah, aren't you still streaming, Mickey? The Shining is never... Again, not one I've seen. That does remind me of 1408. 1408 sucked. I'll be real. I watched 1408. I was obsessed with the short story when I first graduated high school. I need to relocate the chat window. Come here, you. Ah, that's better. I am of the opinion that 1408 is a movie that either cannot be captured on, it's a story that cannot be properly conveyed on film, or it has not been attempted by someone, I think, who has the talent to make it work. Because the 1408 movie did not scare me. It was almost cartoonish in how it didn't evoke any of the same feelings that the book did. You know what? Hear me out. What if? One moment, chat. That one doesn't seem as good. Oh my god, I found a screenplay. That's insane. Aha! Is my phone... Oh my goodness. Leave a message. Yeah. Don't have time for nonsense. Now, if only there was a way... There we go. There's got to be a way to scroll. Whatever. Yeah, we mentioned Monster House. Never seen Trick or Treat. Did we mention Hocus Pocus? Absolutely. I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. You can't stop the things I do. I ain't lying. It's been 300 years, right down to the day. Now this witch is back, and there's hell to pay. I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. God, my expressions are bad. There we go. And now you're mine. I put a spell on you, and now you're gone. Ugh. What if, chat, hear me out. Question for you. Would you be engaged if I read a scary story? Now the question is, am I going to be able to scroll this effectively when the window has a really small scroll bar and has it insists on just randomly shrinking itself? Let's see how well this goes. Why not? If it doesn't go well, we'll stop. Mike Enslin was still in the revolving door when he saw Olin, the manager of the Hotel Dolphin, sitting in one of the overstuffed lobby chairs. Mike's heart sank. Maybe I should have brought the lawyer along again after all, he thought. Well, too late now. And even if Olin had decided to throw up another roadblock or two between Mike and room 1408, that wasn't all bad. There were compensations. Olin was crossing the room with one pudgy hand held out as Mike left the revolving door. The Dolphin was on 61st Street, around the corner from 5th Avenue. Small, but smart. A man and a woman dressed in evening's clothes passed Mike as he reached for Olin's hand, switching his small overnight case to his left hand in order to do it. The woman was blonde, dressed in black, of course, and the light, flowery smell of her perfume seemed to summarize New York. On the mezzanine level, someone was playing Night and Day in the bar, as if to underline the summary. Mr. Enslin, good evening. Mr. Olin, is there a problem? Olin looked pained. For a moment, he glanced around the small, smart lobby, as if for help. At the concierge stand, a man was discussing theater tickets with his wife, while the concierge himself watched them with a small, patient smile. At the front desk, a man with the rumpled look one only got after long hours in business class was discussing his reservation with a woman in a smart black suit that could itself have doubled for evening wear. It was business as usual at the Hotel Dolphin. There was help for everyone except poor Mr. Olin, who had fallen into the writer's clutches. Oops. Very hard to scroll and fucking... Good lord. Yeah. Mr. Olin, Mike repeated. Mr. Enslin, could I speak to you for a moment in my office? Well, and why not? It would help the section on room 1408 add to the ominous tone the readers of his books seemed to crave. And that wasn't all. Mike Enslin hadn't been sure until now. In spite of all the backing and filling, now he was. Olin was really afraid of room 1408, and of what might happen to Mike there tonight. Of course, Mr. Olin. Olin, the good host, reached for Mike's bag. Allow me. I'm fine with it, Mike said. Nothing but a change of clothes and a toothbrush. Are you sure? Yes, Mike said. I'm already wearing my lucky Halloween shirt. You know what? That's not what I meant. It's the spirit of the season. I'm already wearing my lucky Hawaiian shirt. He smiled. It's the one with the ghost repellent. Olin didn't smile back. He sighed instead. A little round man in dark cutaway coat and a neatly knotted tie. Very good, Mr. Enslin. Follow me. The hotel manager had seemed tentative in the lobby, almost beaten. In his oak-paneled office, with the pictures of the hotel on the walls, the Dolphin had opened in 1910. Mike might publish without the benefit of reviews in the journals or the big city papers, but he did his research. Olin seemed to gain assurance again. There was a Persian carpet on the floor. 2 standing lamps cast a mild yellow light. A desk lamp with a green lozenge-shaped shade stood on the desk, next to the humidor. And next to the humidor were Mike Enslin's last 3 books. Paperback editions, of course. There had been no hardbacks. Mine host has been doing a little research of his own, Mike thought. Mike sat down in front of the desk. He expected Olin to sit behind the desk, but Olin surprised him. He took the chair beside Mike's, crossed his legs, then leaned forward over his tidy little belly to touch the humidor. Cigar, Mr. Angelin? No, thank you. I don't smoke. Olin's eyes shifted to the cigarette behind Mike's right ear. Parked on a jaunty jut, the way an old-time wisecracking reporter might have parked his next smoke just below the press tag. Stuck. Oop. Okay, guess what? OBS, not OBS, but this program does not let me scroll easily. How are we feeling, by the way? Is this engaging, or y'all don't like this? Ooh, there we go. Never mind, I've got the pop-up keyboard now. All right. Let me try that again. Olin's eyes shifted to the cigarette behind Mike's right ear. Parked on a jaunty jut the way an old-time wisecracking reporter might have parked his next smoke just below the press tag stuck in the band of his fedora. The cigarette had become so much a part of him that for a moment Mike honestly didn't know what Olin was even looking at. Then he laughed, took it down, looked at it himself, and looked back at Olin. Let me move you guys down a bit. I said, let me move you guys down a bit. There we go. In fact, not quite what I had in mind. That'll do. I can't let go. It's like there's something going on with my goddamn controllers today, and it's really driving me bonkers. It's like I'm stuck. Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that are my hands too sweaty for you? This is a new problem. I've never had this issue where my controllers won't let go of the fucking things I'm grabbing. It's a new issue. Hold on a second. God, this is a nuisance. There we go. I think that'll do. Now, I'm basically looking at you while I read. Hello, Epicmon. Oh, is that a new problem? Is it okay? I guess I thought it was just me being a ding-dong today, but I guess not. All right. Yeah. We were on the cigarette part. Haven't had one in 9 years, he said. Had an older brother who died of lung cancer. I quit after he died. The cigarette behind the ear, he shrugged. Part affectation, part superstition. I guess. Like the Hawaiian shirt, or the cigarettes you sometimes see on people's desks or walls. Mounted in a little box with a sign saying, break glass in case of emergency. Is 1408 a smoking room, Mr. Olin? Just in case nuclear war breaks out. As a matter of fact, it is. Well, Mike said heartily, that's one less worry in the watches of the night. Mr. Olin sighed again. But this sigh didn't have the disconsolate. Oh, the disconsolate? This is actually a word I don't know how to say out loud. Like, I might have a good vibe of what it means. Disconsolate. Or disconsolate? Whatever. disconsolate. Because it's like, yeah. Mr. Olin sighed again, but this sigh didn't have the disconsolate quality of his lobby sigh. Yes, it was the office, Mike reckoned. Olin's office, his special place. Even this afternoon, when Mike had come accompanied by Robertson, the lawyer, Olin had seemed less flustered once they were in here. And why not? Where else could you feel in charge, if not in your special place? Olin's office was a room with good pictures on the walls, a good rug on the floor, and good cigars in the humidor. A lot of managers had no doubt conducted a lot of business in here since 1910. In its own way, it was as New York as the blonde in her black off-the-shoulder dress, her smell of perfume, and her unarticulated promise of sleek New York sex in the small hours of the morning. Well, one moment. Lumina, thank you so much for the raid. Welcome on in to the spooky story time. We're reading a Stephen King classic. How was Zort? What the fuck is Zort? That sounds like fucking sci-fi onomatopoeia for when you shoot someone with a laser. You know what I'm talking about. Also, I'm putting my hands down so I can hydrate. Disconsolation. Yeah, disconsolate. Somehow, I splashed water up through the tiny gap between the helmet and my eye to get it in my eye. I'm hydrating with water. There's nothing else you hydrate with, Mickey. Never seen you in VR. I see you're enjoying yourself. I am indeed. I don't do VR streams very often because, as we've proven within 5 minutes ago, that it's a goddamn hassle. It's a mix of spooky and shitposts. Excellent. We are reading a scary story. A lot of build-up, but I promise you, it's worth it. Please feel obligated to stick around. I demand it. No, if you need to hop out, grab food and water, or anything else you might need, do not feel obligated to stick around by any means. I'm going to get right back to it. You still don't think I can talk you out of this idea of yours, do you? Olin asked. I know you can't, Mike said, replacing the cigarette behind his ear. He didn't slick his hair back with Vitalis or Wildroot cream oil, as those colorful fedora-wearing scribblers of yore had, but he still changed the cigarette every day, just as he changed his underwear. You sweat back there behind your ears? If he examined the cigarette at the end of the day before throwing its unsmoked deadly length into the toilet, Mike could see the faint yellow-orange residue of the sweat on the thin white paper. It did not increase the temptation to light up. How he had smoked for almost 20 years, 30 butts a day, sometimes 40, was now beyond him. Why he had done it was an even better question. Olin picked up the little stack of paperbacks from the blotter. I sincerely hope you're wrong. Mike Rand opened the zipper on the side pocket of his overnight bag. He brought out a Sony mini-quarter. Would you mind if I taped our conversation, Mr. Olin? Olin waved a hand. Mike pushed record, and the little red light came on. The reels began to turn. Olin, meanwhile, was shuffling slowly through the stack of books, reading the titles. As always, when he saw his books in someone else's hands, Mike Enslin felt the oddest mix of emotions. Pride, unease, amusement, defiance, and shame. He had no business feeling ashamed of them. They had kept him nicely over these last 5 years, and he didn't have to share any of the profits with the packager. Book whores was what his agent called them, perhaps partly in envy, because he had come up with the concept himself. Although after the first book had sold so well, only a moron could have missed the concept. What was there to do after Frankenstein but Bride of Frankenstein? Still, he had gone to Iowa. He had studied with Jane Smiley. He had once been on a panel with Stanley Elkin. He had once aspired, absolutely no one in his current circle of friends and acquaintances had any least inkling of this, he aspired to be published as a Yale younger poet. And when the hotel manager began speaking the titles aloud, Mike found himself wishing he hadn't challenged Olin with the recorder. Later, he would listen to Olin's measured tones and imagine he heard contempt in them. He touched the cigarette behind his ear without being aware of it. 10 nights. 10 nights in 10 haunted houses, Olin read. 10 nights in 10 haunted graveyards. 10 nights in 10 haunted castles. He looked up at Mike with a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. Let's see. Yeah, got to Scotland on that one. Not to mention the Vienna woods. And all tax-deductible, correct? Hauntings are, after all, your business. Do you have a point? You're sensitive about these, aren't you? Olin asked. Sensitive, yes. Vulnerable, no. If you're hoping to persuade me out of your hotel by critiquing my books, no, not at all. I was curious, that's all. I sent Marcel, he's the concierge these days, out to get them 2 days ago, when you first appeared with your request. It was a demand, not a request. Still is. You heard, Mr. Robertson. New York state law, not to mention 2 federal civil rights laws, forbids you to deny me a specific room. If I request that specific room and the room is vacant. And 1408 is vacant. 1408 is always vacant these days. But Mr. Olin was not to be diverted from the subject of Mike's last 3 books. New York Times bestsellers all. Not yet. He simply shuffled through them a 3rd time. The mellow lamplight reflected off their shiny covers. There was a lot of purple on the covers. Purple sold scary books better than any other color, Mike had been told. I didn't get a chance to dip into these until earlier this evening, Olin said. I've been quite busy. I usually am. The Dolphin is small by New York standards, but we run at 90% occupancy, and usually a problem comes through the front door with every guest. Like me. Olin smiled a little. I'd say you're a bit of a special problem, Mr. Enslin. You and your Mr. Robertson and all your threats. Mike felt nettled all over again. He had made no threats, unless Robertson himself was a threat. And he had been forced to use the lawyer as a man might be forced to use a crowbar on a rusty lockbox, which would no longer accept the key. The lockbox isn't yours, a voice inside told him. But the laws of the state and the country said differently. The laws said that room 1408 in the Hotel Dolphin was his if he wanted it, and as long as no one else had it first. He became aware that Olin was watching him, still with that faint smile. And if he had been following Mike's interior dialogue almost word for word, as if he had been following Mike's interior dialogue almost word for word, it was an uncomfortable feeling, and Mike was finding this an unexpectedly uncomfortable meeting. It felt as if he had been on the defensive ever since he'd taken out the mini-quarter, which was usually intimidating, and turned it on. If any of this has a point, Mr. Olin, I'm afraid I lost sight of it a turn or 2 back. And I've had a long day. If our wrangle over room 1408 is really over, I'd like to go on upstairs and... I read one. What would you call them? Essays? Tales? Bill payers was what Mike called them. But he didn't intend to say that with the tape running. Not even though it was his tape. Story, Olin decided. Oh no, sorry. Story, Olin decided. I read one story from each book. The one about the Rilsby house in Kansas, from your Haunted Houses book. Ah, yes, the axe murders. The fellow who had been chopped up... fuck me. It is story time, yes. Ah, yes, the axe murders. The fellow who had chopped up all 6 members of the Eugene Rilsby family had never been caught. Exactly so. And the one about the night you spent camped out on the graves of the lovers in Alaska who committed suicide. The ones people keep claiming to see around Sitka. And the account of your night in Gardsby Castle. That was actually quite amusing. I was surprised. Mike's ear was carefully tuned to catch the undertones of contempt in even the blandest comments about his 10 Nights books, and he had no doubt that he sometimes heard contempt that wasn't there. Few creatures on Earth are so paranoid as the writer who believes, deep in his heart, that he is slumming it. Mike had discovered, but he didn't believe there was any contempt here. Thank you, he said. I guess. He glanced down at his mini-quarter. Usually its little red eye seemed to be watching the other guy, daring him to say the wrong thing. This evening, it seemed to be looking at Mike himself. Oh, yes, I meant it as a compliment. Olin tapped the books. I expect to finish these. But for the writing. It's the writing I like. I was surprised to find myself laughing at your quite unsupernatural adventures in Gardsby Castle, and I was surprised to find you as good as you are, as subtle as you are. I expected more hack and slash. Mike steeled himself for what would almost certainly come next. Olin's variation of, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this? Olin, the urbane hotelier, host to blonde women who wore black dresses out into the night, hirer of weedy, retiring men who wore tuxes and tinkled old standards like Night and Day in the hotel bar. Olin, who probably read Proust on his nights off. But they are disturbing, too, these books. If I hadn't looked at them, I don't think I would have bothered waiting for you this evening. Once I saw that lawyer with his briefcase, I knew you meant to stay in that goddamned room, and that nothing I could say was apt to dissuade you. But the books... Mike reached out and snapped off the mini-quarter. That little red staring eye was starting to give him the willies. Do you want to know why I'm bottom-feeding? Is that it? I assume you do it for the money, Olin said mildly. And you're feeding a long way from the bottom, at least in my estimation. Although it's interesting that you would jump so nimbly to such a conclusion. Mike felt warmth rising in his cheeks. No, this wasn't going the way he had expected at all. He had never snapped his recorder off in the middle of a conversation. But Olin wasn't what he had seemed. I was led astray by his hands, Mike thought. Those pudgy little hotel manager's hands with their meat-white crescents of manicured nail. What concerned me, what frightened me, is that I found myself reading the book, the work, of an intelligent, talented man who doesn't believe one single thing he has written. That wasn't exactly true, Mike thought. He'd written perhaps 24 stories he believed in. Had actually published a few. He'd written reams of poetry he believed in during his first 18 months in New York, when he had starved on the payroll of the Village Voice. But did he believe that the headless ghost of Eugene Rilsby walked his deserted Kansas farmhouse by moonlight? No. He had spent the night in that farmhouse, camped out on the dirty linoleum hills of the kitchen floor, and had seen nothing scarier than 2 mice trundling along the baseboard. He had spent a hot summer night in the ruins of the Transylvanian castle where Vlad Tepes, I believe it's Tepish? Yeah. He had spent a hot summer night in the ruins of the Transylvanian castle where Vlad Tepes supposedly still held court. The only vampires to actually show up had been a fog of European mosquitoes. During the night, camped out by the grave of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, a white, blood-streaked figure waving a knife had come at him out of the 2 o'clock darkness, but the giggles of the apparition's friends had given him away, and Mike Enslin hadn't been terribly impressed. Anyway, he knew a teenage ghost waving a rubber knife when he saw one, but he had no intention of telling any of this to Olin. He couldn't afford. Except he could. The mini-quarter, a mistake from the get-go, he now understood, was stowed away again, and this meeting was about as off the record as you could get. Also, he had come to admire Olin in a weird way, and when you admired a man, you wanted to tell him the truth. "No," he said. "I don't believe in ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. I think it's good there are no such things, because I don't believe there's any good lord that can protect us from them. That's what I believe. But I've kept an open mind from the very start. I may never win the Pulitzer Prize for investigating the barking ghost in Mount Hope Cemetery, but I would have written fairly about him if he had shown up." Olin said something. Only a single word, but too low for Mike to make out. "I beg pardon." "I said no." Olin looked at him almost apologetically. Mike sighed. Olin thought he was a liar. When you got to that point, the only choices were to put up your dukes or disengage totally from the discussion. "Why don't we leave this for another day, Mr. Olin? I'll just go on upstairs and brush my teeth. Perhaps I'll see Kevin O'Malley materialize behind me in the bathroom mirror." Mike started to get out of his chair, and Olin put out one of his pudgy, carefully manicured hands to stop him. "I'm not calling you a liar," he said, "but, Mr. Enslin, you don't believe. Ghosts rarely appear to those who don't believe in them, and when they do, they are rarely seen. Why, Eugene Rilsby could have howled his... Fuck me, man. Reading in VR. Let me try this again. Happy Halloween, Solari, and Skittish, by the way. Let me reread that. I'm not calling you a liar. But, Mr. Enslin, you don't believe. Ghosts rarely appear to those who don't believe in them, and when they do, they are rarely seen. Why, Eugene Rilsby could have bowled his severed head all the way down the front hall of his house, and you wouldn't have heard a thing." Mike stood up, then bent to grab his overnight case. "If that's so, I won't have anything to worry about in room 1408, will I?" "But you will," Olin said. "You will. Because there are no ghosts in room 1408, and never have been. There's something in there. I felt it myself, but it's not a spirit presence. In an abandoned house or an old castle keep, your unbelief may serve as your protection. In room 1408, it will only render you more vulnerable. Don't do it, Mr. Enslin. That's why I waited for you tonight, to ask you, beg you, not to do it. Of all the people on Earth who don't belong in that room, the man who wrote those cheerful, exploitative True Ghost books leads the list." Mike heard this and didn't hear it at the same time. "And you turned off your tape recorder," he was raving. "He embarrasses me into turning off my tape recorder, and then he turns into Boris Karloff, boasting the All-Star Spook Weekend. Fuck it. I'll quote him anyway. If he doesn't like it, let him sue me." All at once, he was burning to get upstairs, not just so he could start getting his long night in a corner hotel room over with, but because he wanted to transcribe what Olin had just said while it was still fresh in his mind. "Have a drink, Mr. Enslin?" "No, I really..." Mr. Olin reached into his coat pocket and brought out a key on a long brass paddle. The brass looked old and scratched and tarnished. Embossed on it were the numbers 1408. "Please," Olin said, "humor me. You give me 10 more minutes of your time. Long enough to consume a short scotch, and I'll hand you this key. I would give almost anything to be able to change her mind, but I like to think I can recognize the inevitable when I see it. You still use actual keys here? Mike asked. That's sort of a nice touch. Antique-y. The Dolphin went to a mag card system in 1979, Mr. Enslin, the year I took the job as manager. 1408 is the only room in the house that still opens with a key. There is no need to put a mag card lock on its door, because there's never anyone inside. The room was last occupied by a paying guest in 1978. You're shitting me! Mike sat down again and unlimbered his mini-quarter again. He pushed the record button and said, House manager Olin claims 1408 was not been rented. House manager Olin claims 1408's not rented to a paying guest in over 20 years. It is just as well that 1408 has never needed a mag card lock on its door, because I am completely positive the device wouldn't work. Digital wristwatches don't work in room 1408. Sometimes they run backwards. Sometimes they simply go out. But you can't tell time with one. Not in room 1408, you can't. The same is true of pocket calculators and cell phones. If you're wearing a beeper, Mr. Enslin, I advise you to turn it off, because once you're in room 1408, it will start beeping at will. He paused. And turning it off isn't guaranteed to work either. It may turn himself back on. The only sure cure is to pull the batteries. He pushed the stop button on the mini-quarter without examining the buttons. Mike supposed he used a similar model for dictating memos. Actually, Mr. Enslin, the only sure cure is to stay the hell out of that room. I can't do that, Mike said, taking his mini-quarter back and stowing it. But I think I can take time for that drink. How we doing, chat? We engaged? Again, this is one of my favorite of Stephen King's. I think it is one of, if not his best. We haven't gotten to the spooky part yet, but the build-up is super important. Just want to make sure everyone's still with me. Awesome. Give me a second, I need to get more sippies. I don't do reading time often, specifically because of the strain it puts on my voice. Yeah. Alright. We carry on. Once I get the lid onto this goddamn bottle. Oh my god. Screw on. There you go. Spooky specter, my spooky energy. All right. I doubt it's against TOS. We've done this before. While Olin poured from the fumed oak bar beneath an oil painting of Fifth Avenue at the turn of the century, Mike asked him how, if the room had been continuously unoccupied since 1978, Olin knew that high-tech gadgets didn't work inside. I didn't intend to give you the impression that no one had set foot through the door since 1978, Olin replied. For one thing, there are maids in once a month to give the place a light turn. That means Mike, who had been working on 10 haunted hotel rooms for about 4 months at that point, said, I know what it means. A light turn in an unoccupied room would include opening the windows to change the air, dusting, enough Thai D-bowl in the can to turn the water briefly blue, a change of the towels. Probably... Oh, yes, basically, yeah. That feels like it's missing a word. Probably not the bed linen, not on a light turn. He wondered if he should have brought his sleeping bag. Crossing the Persian from the bar with their drinks in his hands, Olin seemed to read Mike's thought on his face. The sheets were changed this very afternoon, Mr. Enslin. Why don't you drop that? Call me Mike. I don't think I'd be comfortable with that, Olin said, handing Mike his drink. Here's to you. And you. Mike lifted his glass, meaning to clink it against Olin's, but Olin pulled his back. No, to you, Mr. Enslin. I insist. Tonight we should both drink to you. You'll need it. Mike sighed, clinked the rim of his glass against the rim of Olin's, and said, To me. You would have been right at home in a horror movie, Mr. Olin. You could have played the gloomy old butler who tries to warn the young married couple away from Castle Doom. Olin sat down. It's a part I haven't had to play often. Thank God. Room 1408 isn't listed on any of the websites dealing with paranormal locations or psychic hotspots. That'll change after my book, Mike thought, sipping his drink. And there are no ghost tours with stops at the Hotel Dolphin, although they do tour through the Sherry Netherland, the Plaza, and the Park Lane. We have kept 1408 as quiet as possible, although, of course, the history has always been there for a researcher who is both lucky and tenacious. Mike allowed himself a small smile. Veronique changed the sheets, Olin said. I accompanied her. You should feel flattered, Mr. Enslin. It's almost like having your night's linen put on by royalty. Veronique and her sister came to the Dolphin as chambermaids in 1971 or 72. V, as we call her, is the Hotel Dolphin's longest-running employee, with at least 6 years' seniority over me. She has since risen to head housekeeper. I'd guess she hadn't changed a sheet in 6 years before today, but she used to do all the turns in 1408. She and her sister, until about 1992. Veronique and Celeste were twins, and the bond between them seemed to make them... How shall I put it? Not immune to 1408, but its equal. At least for the short periods of time needed to give the room a light turn. You're not going to tell me this Veronique's sister died in the room, are you? No, not at all, Olin said. She left service here around 1988, suffering from ill health, but I don't rule out the idea that 1408 may have played a part in her worsening mental and physical condition. We seem to have built a rapport here, Mr. Olin. I hope I don't snap it by telling you I find that ridiculous. So hard-headed for a student of the airy world. I owe it to my readers, Mike said blandly. I suppose I simply could have left 1408 as it is anyway during most of its days and nights, the hotel manager mused. Door locked, lights off, shades drawn to keep the sun from fading the carpet. Coverlay pulled up, doorknob, breakfast menu on the bed, but I can't bear to think of the air getting stuffy and old, like the air in an attic. Can't bear to think of the dust piling up until it's thick and fluffy. What does that make me? Persnickety or downright obsessive? It makes you a hotel manager, I suppose. In any case, V and C turned that room very quick, just in and out, until C retired and V got her first big promotion. After that, I got other maids to do it in pairs, always picking ones who got on well with each other. Hoping for that bond to withstand the bogies? Hoping for that bond, yes. And you can make fun of room 1408's bogies as much as you want, Mr. Enslin, but you'll feel them almost at once. Of that, I am confident. Whatever there is in that room, it is not shy. Hey, Evil King, this is 1408. On many occasions, all that I could manage, I went with the maids to supervise them. He paused, then added almost reluctantly, to pull them out, I suppose, if anything really awful started to happen. Nothing ever did. There were several who had weeping fits, one who had a laughing fit. I don't know why someone laughing out of control should be more frightening than someone sobbing, but it is. And a number who fainted. Nothing too terrible. However, I had time enough over the years to make a few primitive experiments, beepers and cell phones and such, but nothing too terrible, thank God. He paused again, then added in a queer, flat tone, One of them went blind. What? She went blind. Rami Van Gelder. That was. She was dusting the top of the television, and all at once she began to scream. I asked her what was wrong. She dropped her dust rag and put her hands over her eyes and screamed that she was blind, but that she could see the most awful colors. They went away almost as soon as I got her out through the door, and by the time I got her down the hallway to the elevator, her sight had begun to come back. You're telling me all of this just to scare me, Mr. Olin, aren't you? To scare me off. Indeed, I am not. You know the history of the room, beginning with the suicide of its first occupant. Mike did. Kevin O'Malley, a sewing machine salesman, had taken his life on October 13th, 1910, a leaper who had left a wife and 7 children behind. 5 men. 5 men and 1 woman have jumped from that room's single window, Mr. Enslin. 3 women and 1 man have overdosed with pills in that room. 2 found in bed, 2 found in the bathroom, 1 in the tub, and 1 sitting slumped on the toilet. A man hanged himself in the closet in 1970. Henry Storkin, Mike said. That one was probably accidental. Erotic asphyxia. Perhaps. There was also Randolph Hyde, who slit his wrists and then cut off... Oh my goodness! Well, let's just say he castrated himself, chat. I forget that Stephen King doesn't pull his punches. That wasn't erotic asphyxiation. The point is, Mr. Enslin, that if you can't be swayed from your intention by a record of 12 suicides in 68 years, I doubt if the gasps and fibrillations of a few chambermaids will stop you. Gasps and fibrillations. That's mine. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, gasps and fibrillations. That's nice, Mike thought, and wondered if he could steal that for the book. Few of the pairs who have turned 1408 over the years care to go back more than a few times, Olin said, and finished his drink in a tidy little gulp. Except for the French twins. V and C, that's true, Olin nodded. Mike didn't care much about the maids and their... What had Olin called them? Their gasps and fibrillations? He did feel mildly rankled by Olin's enumeration of the suicides, as if Mike was so thick he had missed not the fact of them, but their import. Except, really, there was no import. Both Abraham Lincoln and John Kennedy had vice presidents named Johnson. The names Lincoln and Kennedy had 7 letters. Both Lincoln and Kennedy had been elected in years ending in 60. What did all of these coincidences prove? Not a damned thing. The suicides will make a wonderful segment for my book, Mike said, but since the tape recorder is off, I can tell you they amount to what God, what a fucking word. Statistician. God, that's a mouthful of a word. But since the tape recorder is off, I can tell you they amount to what a statistician... Fuck me running! I hate words, says the writer. Statistician. They amount to what a statistician resource of mine calls the cluster effect. Charles Dickens called it the potato effect, Olin said. I beg your pardon? When Jacob Marley's ghost first speaks to Scrooge, Scrooge tells him he could be nothing but a blob of mustard or a bit of underdone potato. Is that supposed to be funny? Mike said, a trifle coldly. Nothing about this strikes me as funny, Mr. Enslin. Nothing at all. Listen very closely, please. V's sister, Celeste, died of a heart attack. At that point, she was suffering mid-stage Alzheimer's, a disease which struck her very early in life. And yet her sister is fine and well, according to what you said earlier. An American success story, in fact. As you are yourself, Mr. Olin, from the look of you. Yet you've been in and out of the room 1408 how many times? 100? 200? For very short periods of time, Olin said. It's perhaps like entering a room filled with poison gas. If one holds one's breath, one may be all right. I see you don't like that comparison. You no doubt find it overwrought, perhaps ridiculous, yet I believe it is a good one. He steepled his fingers beneath his chin. It's also possible that some people react more quickly and more violently to whatever lives in that room, just as some people who go scuba diving are more prone to the bends than others. Over the Dolphin's near century of operation, the hotel staff has grown ever more aware that 1408 is a poisoned room. It has become part of the house history, Mr. Enslin. No one talks about it, just as no one mentions the fact that here, as in most hotels, the 14th floor is actually the 13th. But they know it. If all the facts and records pertaining to that room were available, they would tell an amazing story, one more uncomfortable than your readers might enjoy. A lot of build-up, Chad. How we doing? Chat? Ooh-woo? Can I get a check-in, please? Hello, Obake? Cool. Sharpening some claws, doing fine. Awesome. I should guess, for example, that every hotel in New York has had its suicides, but I would be willing to wager my life that only in the Dolphin have there been a dozen of them in a single room. In leaving Celeste Romadeau aside, what about the natural deaths in 1408? The so-called natural deaths. How many have there been? The idea of so-called natural deaths in 1408 had never occurred to him. 30, Olin replied. 30, at least. 30 that I know of. You're lying! The words were out of his mouth before he could call them back. No, Mr. Enslin, I assure you I am not. Did you really think that we keep that room empty just out of some vapid old wives' superstition or ridiculous New York tradition? The idea, maybe, that every fine old hotel should have at least one unquiet spirit clanking around in the suite of invisible chains? Mike Enslin realized that just such an idea, not articulated but there, just the same, had indeed been hanging around his new 10 Nights book. To hear Olin scoff at it, in the irritated tones of a scientist scoffing at a brouhaha-waving native, did nothing to soothe his chagrin. God. Not a fan of that turn of phrase, if I'm honest. Again, this book was written in the 70s. No, when was 1408 written? It had to be written in the 90s, maybe, actually. I don't know. We have our superstitions and traditions in the hotel trade, but we don't let them get in the way of our business, Mr. Enslin. There's an old saying in the Midwest, where I broke into the business. There are no drafty rooms when the cattlemen are in town. If we have empties, we fill them. The only exception to that rule I have ever made, and the only talk like this I have ever had, is on the account of room 1408. A room on the 13th floor whose very numerals add up to 13. Olin looked levelly at Mike Enslin. It is a room not only of suicides, but of strokes and heart attacks and epileptic seizures. One man who stayed in that room, this was in 1973, apparently drowned in a bowl of soup. You would undoubtedly call that ridiculous, but I spoke to the man who was head of hotel security at that time, and he saw the death certificate. The power of whatever inhabits the room seems to be less around midday, which is when the room turns always occur. and yet I know of several maids who have turned that room who now suffer from heart problems, emphysema, diabetes. There was a heating problem on the floor 3 years ago, and Mr. Neal, the head maintenance engineer at that time, had to go into several of the rooms to check the heating units. 1408 was one of them. He seemed fine then, both in the room and later on, but he died the following afternoon of a massive cerebral hemorrhage. Coincidence, Mike said. Yet he could not deny that Olin was good. Had the man been a camp counselor, he would have scared 90% of the kiddies back home after the first round of campfire ghost stories. Coincidence, Olin repeated softly, not quite contemptuously. He held out the old-fashioned key on its old-fashioned brass paddle. How is your own heart, Mr. Enslin? Not to mention your blood pressure and psychological condition. Mike found it took an actual, conscious effort to lift his hand, but once he got it moving, it was fine. It rose to the key without even the minimalist or minutest of trembling at the fingertips, so far as he could see. All fine, he said, grasping the worn brass paddle. Besides, I'm wearing my lucky Hawaiian shirt. One moment. You might notice it has gotten quiet, and that is deliberate. No more music. Now, the horror can begin. Olin insisted on accompanying Mike to the 14th floor in the elevator, and Mike did not demur. He was interested to see that, once they were out of the manager's office and walking down the hall, which led to the elevators, the man reverted to his less consequential self. He became once again poor Mr. Olin, the flunky who had fallen into the writer's clutches. A man in a tux, Mike guessed he was either the restaurant manager or the maitre d', stopped them, offered Olin a thin sheaf of papers, and murmured to him in French. Olin murmured back, nodding, and quickly scribbled his signature on the sheets. The fellow in the bar was now playing Autumn in New York. From this distance it had an echoey sound, like music heard in a dream. The man in the tuxedo said, Merci bien, and went on his way. Mike and the hotel manager went on theirs. Olin again asked if he could carry Mike's little valise, and Mike again refused. In the elevator, Mike found his eyes drawn to the neat triple row of buttons. Everything was where it should have been. There were no gaps. And yet, if you looked more closely, you saw that there was. The button marked 12 was followed by one marked 14. As if, Mike thought, they could make the number non-existent by omitting it from the control panel of an elevator. Foolishness. And yet Olin was right. It was done all over the world. As the car rose, Mike said, I'm curious about something. Why didn't you simply create a fictional resident for room 1408, if it scares you all as badly as you say it does? For that matter, Mr. Olin, why not declare it as your own residence? I suppose I was afraid I would be accused of fraud, if not by the people responsible for enforcing state and federal civil rights statutes. Hotel people feel about civil rights laws as many of your readers probably feel about clanking chains in the night. Then by my bosses, if they got wind of it. If I couldn't persuade you to stay out of room 1408, I doubt that I would have had much more luck in convincing the Stanley Corporation's board of directors that it took a perfectly good room off the market because I was afraid that spooks caused the occasional traveling salesman to jump out of the window and splatter himself all over 61st Street. Mike found this the most disturbing thing Olin had said yet. Because he's not trying to convince me anymore, he thought. Whatever salesmanship powers he had in his office, maybe it's some vibe that comes up from that Persian rug. He loses it out here. Competency, yes. You could see that when he was signing the Matrades shits. I believe it's chits, actually. But not salesmanship. Not personal magnetism. Not out here. But he believes it. He believes it all. Above the door, the illuminated 12 went out and the 14 came on. The elevator stopped. The door slid open to reveal a perfectly ordinary hotel corridor with a red and gold carpet, most definitely not a Persian, and electric fixtures that looked like 19th century gas lights. "Here we are," Olin said. "Your floor. You'll pardon me if I leave you here. 1408 is to your left, at the end of the hall. Unless I absolutely have to, I don't go any closer than this." Mike Enslin stepped out of the elevator on legs that seemed heavier than they should have. He turned back to Olin, a pudgy little man in a black coat and a carefully knotted wine-colored tie. Olin's manicured hands were clasped behind him now, and Mike saw that the little man's face was as pale as cream. On his high, lineless forehead, drops of perspiration stood out. "There's a telephone in the room, of course," Olin said. "You could try it, if you find yourself in trouble, but I doubt that it will work. Not if the room doesn't want it to." Mike thought of a light reply, something about how that would save him a room service charge at least, but all at once his tongue seemed as heavy as his legs. It just lay there on the floor of his mouth. Olin brought one hand out from behind his back, and Mike saw it was trembling. "Mr. Enslin," he said. "Mike, don't do this. For God's sake." Before he could finish, the elevator door slid shut, cutting him off. Mike stood where he was for a moment, in the perfect New York hotel silence of what no one on the staff would admit was the 13th floor of the Hotel Dolphin, and thought of reaching out and pushing the elevator's call button. Except if he did that, Olin would win. And there would be a large gaping hole where the best chapter of his new book should have been. The readers might not know that. His editor and his agent might not know it. Robertson the lawyer might not. But he would. Instead of pushing the call button, he reached up and touched the cigarette behind his ear. That old, distracted gesture he no longer knew he was making, and flicked the collar of his lucky shirt. Then he started down the hallway towards 1408, swinging his overnight case by his side. "All right, gang. We're in the second section now. Y'all good? Y'all vibing? It's about to get crazy. Or is it? I don't know." Hello, Cheesy. Welcome on in. Here we go. Honestly, it's extra eerie because all I can hear is, like, crickets and shit. And, like, a gentle breeze in this map. Here we go. Here we go. The most interesting artifact left in the wake of Michael Enslin's brief stay, it lasted about 70 minutes, in room 1408, was the 11 minutes of recorded tape in his mini-quarter, which was charred a bit, but not even close to destroyed. The fascinating thing about the narration was how little narration there was, and how odd it became. The mini-quarter had been a present from his ex-wife, with whom he had remained friendly 5 years before. On his first case expedition, the Rilsby farm in Kansas, he had taken it almost as an afterthought, along with 5 yellow legal pads and a leather case filled with sharpened pencils. By the time he reached the door of room 1408 in the Hotel Dolphin, 3 books later, he came with a single pen and notebook, plus 5 fresh 90-minute cassettes, in addition to the one he had loaded into the machine before leaving his apartment. He had discovered that narration served him better than note-taking. He was able to catch anecdotes, some of them pretty damned great, as they happened. The bats that had dive-bombed him in the supposedly haunted tower of Gartsby Castle, for instance. He had shrieked like a girl on her first trip through a Carney-haunted house. Friends hearing this were invariably amused. The little tape recorder was more practical than written notes, too, especially when you were in a chilly New Brunswick graveyard and a squall of rain and wind collapsed your tent at 3 a.m. You couldn't take very successful notes in such circumstances, but you could talk, which was what Mike had done, gone on talking as he struggled out of the wet, flapping canvas of his tent, never losing sight of the mini-quarter's comforting red eye. Over the years, and the case expeditions, the Sony mini-quarter had become his friend. He had never recorded a first-hand account of a true supernatural event on the filament-thin ribbon of tape running between its reels, and that included the broken comments he made while in 1408. But it was probably not surprising that he had arrived at such feelings of affectation for the gadget. Long-haul truckers come to love their Kensworths and Jimmy Peets. Writers treasure a certain pen or battered old typewriter. Professional cleaning ladies are loath to give up the old Electrolux. Mike had never had to stand up to an actual ghost or psychokinetic event with only the mini-quarter, his version of a cross and a bunch of garlic, to protect him. But it had been there on plenty of cold, uncomfortable nights. He was hard-headed, but that didn't make him inhuman. Here we go. His problems with 1408 started even before he got into the room. The door was crooked. Not by a lot, but it was crooked, all right. Canted just the tiniest bit to the left. It made him think first of scary movies, where the director tried to indicate mental distress in one of the characters by tipping the camera on the point-of-view shots. This association was followed by another one. The way doors looked when you were on a boat and the weather was a little heavy. Back and forth they went. Right and left they went. Tick and tock they went, until you started to feel a bit woozy in your head and stomach. Not that he felt that way himself. Not at all. But, yes, I do. Just a little. And he would say so, too, if only because of Olin's insinuation that his attitude made it impossible for him to be fair in the undoubtedly subjective field of spook journalism. He bent over, aware that the slightly woozy feeling in his stomach left as soon as he was no longer looking at that subtly off-kilter door, unzipped the pocket on his overnighter, and took out his mini-quarter. He pushed record. As he straightened up, saw the little red light go on, and opened his mouth to say, "The door of room 1408 offers its own unique greeting. It appears to have been set crooked, tipped slightly to the left." He said, "the door," and that's all. If you listen to the tape, you can hear both words clearly. The door, and then the click of the stop button. Because the door wasn't crooked. It was perfectly straight. Mike turned, looked at the door of 1409 across the hall, then back at the door of 1408. Both doors were the same. White, with gold number plaques and gold doorknobs, both perfectly straight. Mike bent, picked up his overnight case with the hand holding the mini-quarter, moved the key in his other hand towards the lock, then stopped again. The door was crooked again. This time it tilted slightly to the right. "This is ridiculous," Mike murmured. But that woozy feeling had already started in his stomach again. It wasn't just like seasickness, it was seasickness. He had crossed to England on the QE2 a couple of years ago, and one night had been extremely rough. What Mike remembered most clearly was lying on the bed in his stateroom, always on the verge of throwing up but never quite able to do it, and how the feeling of nauseated vertigo got worse if you looked at a doorway, or a table, or a chair, at how they would go back and forth, right and left, tick and tock. This is Olin's fault, he thought. Exactly what he wants. He built you up for it, buddy. He set you up for it. Man, how he'd laugh if he could see. How... His thoughts broke off as he realized Olin very likely could see him. Mike looked back down the corridor towards the elevator, barely noticing that the slightly whoopsie feeling in his stomach left the moment he stopped staring at the door. Above and to the left of the elevators, he saw what he had expected. A closed-circuit camera. One of the house dicks might be looking at it this very moment, and Mike was willing to bet that Olin was right there with him, both of them grinning like apes. Teach him to come in here. Yeah, teach him to come in here and start throwing his weight around and his lawyer, Olin says. Look at him. Look at him, the security man replies, grinning more widely than ever. White as a ghost himself, and he hasn't even touched the key to the lock yet. You got him, boss. Got him hook, line, and sinker. Damned if you do, Mike thought. I stayed in the Rilsby house, slept in the room where at least 2 of them were killed, and I did sleep, whether you believed it or not. I spent a night right next to Jeffrey Dahmer's grave and another 2 stones from H.P. Lovecraft's. I brushed my teeth next to the tub where Sir David Smythe supposedly drowned both of his wives. I stopped being scared of campfire stories a long time ago. I'll be damned if you do. He looked back at the door, and the door was straight. He grunted, pushed the key into the lock, and turned it. The door opened. Mike stepped in. The door did not swing slowly shut behind him, as he felt for the light switch, leaving him in total darkness. Besides the lights of the apartment building next door shone through the window. He found the switch. When he flicked it, the overhead light, enclosed in a collection of dangling crystal ornaments, came on. So did the standing lamp by the desk on the far side of the room. The window was above the desk, so someone sitting there writing could pause in his work and look out on 61st Street. Or jump out on 61st, if the urge so took him. Except, Mike set down his bag just inside the door, closed the door, and pushed record again. The little red light went on. According to Olin, 6 people have jumped from the window I'm looking at, he said. But I won't be taking any dives from the 13th, the 13th floor of the Hotel Dolphin tonight. There's an iron or steel mesh grill over the outside. Better safe than sorry. 1408 is what you'd call a junior suite, I guess. The room I'm in has 2 chairs, a sofa, a writing desk, a cabinet that probably contains the TV, and maybe a minibar. Carpet on the floor is unremarkable. Not a patch on Olin's. Believe me. Wallpaper, ditto, it. Wait. At this point, the listener hears another click on the tape as Mike hits the stop button again. All the scant narration on the tape has that same fragmentary quality, which is utterly unlike the other 150 or so tapes in his literary agent's possession. In addition, his voice grows steadily more distracted. It is not the voice of a man at work, but of a perplexed individual who has begun talking to himself without realizing it. The elliptical nature of the tapes and that growing verbal distraction combine to give most listeners a distinct feeling of unease. Many ask that the tape be turned off long before the end is reached. Mere words on a page cannot adequately convey a listener's growing conviction that he is hearing a man lose, if not his mind, then his hold on conventional reality. But even the flat words themselves suggest that something was happening. What Mike had noticed at that point were the pictures on the walls. There were 3 of them. A lady in 20s style evening dress standing on a staircase, a sailing ship done in the fashion of Currier and Ives, and a still life of fruit, the latter painted with an unpleasant yellow-orange cast to the apples as well as the oranges and bananas. All three pictures were in glass frames, and all three were crooked. He had been about to mention the crookedness on tape, but what was so unusual, so worthy of comment, about three off-kilter pictures? That a door should be crooked. Well, that had a little of that odd cabinet of Dr. Caligari charm, but the door hadn't been crooked. His eyes had tricked him for a moment, that was all. The lady on the stairs tilted left. So did the sailing ship, which showed bell-bottomed British tars lining the rail to watch a school of flying fish. The yellowing orange fruit. To Mike, it looked like a bowl of fruit painted by the light of a suffocating equatorial sun. A Paul Bowles desert sun, tilted to the right. Although he was not ordinarily a fussy man, he circled the room, setting them straight. Looking at them crooked like that was making him feel a touch nauseated again. He wasn't entirely surprised, either. One grew susceptible to the feeling. He had discovered that on the QE2. He had been told that if one persevered through that period of increased susceptibility, one usually adapted. Got your sea legs, some of the old hands still said. Mike hadn't done enough sailing to get his sea legs, nor cared to. These days he stuck with his land legs. And if straightening the three pictures in the unremarkable sitting room of 1408 would settle his midsection, good for him. There was dust on the glass covering the pictures. He trailed his fingers across the still life and left two parallel streaks. The dust had a greasy, slippery feel. Like silk just before it rots, was what came into his mind, but he was damned if he was going to put that on tape, either. How was he supposed to know what silk felt like just before it rotted? It was a drunk's thought. When the pictures were set to rights, he stepped back and surveyed them in turn. The evening-dressed lady by the door leading into the bedroom, the ship, plying one of the seven seas to the left of the writing desk, and finally the nasty, and quite badly painted, fruit by the TV cabinet. Part of him expected that they would be crooked again, or fall crooked as he looked at them. That was the way things happened in movies like House on Haunted Hill and in the old episodes of The Twilight Zone. But the pictures remained perfectly straight, as he had fixed them. Not, he told himself, that he would have found anything supernatural or paranormal in a return to their former crooked state. In his experience, reversion was the nature of things. People who had given up smoking, he touched the cigarette cocked behind his ear without being aware of it, wanted to go on smoking, and pictures that had been hanging crooked since Nixon was president wanted to go on hanging crooked. And they've been here a long time, no doubt about that, Mike thought. If I lifted them away from the walls, I'd see lighter patches on the wallpaper, or bugs squirming out, the way they do when you turn over a rock. There was something both shocking and nasty about this idea. It came with a vivid image of blind white bugs oozing out of pale and formally protected wallpaper like living pus. Mike raised the mini-quarter, pushed record, and said, "Olin has certainly started a train of thought in my head. Or a chain of thought. Which is it? He set out to give me the heebie-jeebies, and he certainly succeeded. I don't mean... Didn't mean what? To be racist? Was heebie-jeebies short for Hebrew jeebies? But that was ridiculous. That would be Hebrew Jeebrews, a phrase which was meaningless. It... On the tape at this point, flat and perfectly articulated, Mike Enslin says, "I've got to get a hold of myself. Right now." This is followed by another click as he shuts the tape off again. He closed his eyes and took 4 long, measured breaths. holding each one in to a 5 count before letting it out again. Nothing like this had ever happened to him. Not in the supposedly haunted houses, the supposedly haunted graveyards, or the supposedly haunted castles. This wasn't like being haunted, or what he imagined being haunted would be like. This was like being stoned on bad, cheap dope. Olin did this. Olin hypnotized you. But you're going to break out of it. You're going to spend the goddamned night in this room. And not just because it's the best location you've ever been in. Leave out Olin and you've got damned near enough for the ghost story of the decade already. But because Olin doesn't get to win. Him and his bullshit story about how 30 people have died in here, they don't get to win. I'm the one in charge of bullshit around here. So just breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. In and out. He went on like that for nearly 90 seconds. And when he opened his eyes again, he felt normal. The pictures on the wall, still straight. Fruit in the bowl, still yellow-orange and uglier than ever. Desert fruit for sure. Eat one piece of that and you'd shit until it hurt. He pushed record. The red eye went on. I had a little vertigo for a minute or two, he said, crossing the room to the writing desk and the window with its protective mesh outside. It might have been a hangover from Olin's yarning, but I could believe I feel a genuine presence here. He felt no such thing, of course, but once that was on tape, he could write almost anything he pleased. The air is stale, not musty or foul-smelling. Olin said the place gets aired every time it gets turned, but the turns are quick and... yeah, it's stale. Hey, look at this. There was an ashtray on the writing desk. One of those little ones made of thick glass that you used to see in hotels everywhere, and in it was a book of matches. On the front was the Hotel Dolphin. In front of the hotel stood a smiling doorman in a very old-fashioned uniform, the kind with shoulder boards, gold frogging, and a cap that looked as if it belonged in a gay bar, perched on the head of a motorcycle ramrod wearing nothing else but a few silver body rings. Going back and forth on Fifth Avenue in front of the hotel were cars from another era, Packards and Hudsons, Studebakers and Finney Chrysler New Yorkers. The matchbook in the ashtray looks like it comes from about 1955, Mike said, and slipped it into the pocket of his lucky Hawaiian shirt. I'm keeping it as a souvenir. Now it's time for a little fresh air. There is a clunk as he sets the mini-quarter down, presumably on the writing desk. There is a pause, followed by vague sounds and a couple of effortful grunts. After these come a second pause and then a squeaking sound. Success, he says. This is a little off mic, but the follow-up is closer. Success, Mike repeated, picking the mini-quarter up off the desk. The bottom half wouldn't budge. It's like it's nailed shut, but the top half came down all right. I can hear the traffic on Fifth Avenue, and all the beeping horns have a comforting quality. Someone is playing a saxophone, perhaps in front of the plaza, which is across the street and 2 blocks down. It reminds me of my brother. Mike stopped abruptly, looking at the little red eye. It seemed to accuse him. Brother? His brother was dead. Another fallen soldier in the tobacco wars. Then he relaxed. What of it? There were the spook wars, where Michael Enslin had always come off the winner. As for Donald Enslin, my brother was actually eaten by wolves one winter on the Connecticut Turnpike, he said. Then laughed and pushed stop. There is more on the tape. A little more. But that is the final statement of any coherence. The final statement, that is, to which a clear meaning can be ascribed. Mike turned on his heels and looked at the pictures. Still hanging. Perfectly straight. Good little pictures that they were. That still life, though. What an ugly fucking thing that was. He pushed record and spoke 2 words, fuming oranges, into the mini-quarter. Then he turned it off again and walked across the room to the door leading into the bedroom. He paused by the evening-dressed lady and reached into the darkness, feeling for the light switch. He had just 1 moment to register. It feels like skin, like old dead skin. Something wrong with the wallpaper under his sliding palm. And then his fingers found the switch. The bedroom was flooded with yellow light from another of those ceiling fixtures buried in hanging glass baubles. The bed was a double hiding under a yellow-orange coverlet. Why say hiding? Mike asked the mini-quarter, then pushed the stop button again. He stepped in, fascinated by the fuming desert of the coverlet, by the tumorous bulges of the pillows beneath it. Sleep there? Not at all, sir. It would be like sleeping inside that goddamned still life, sleeping in that horrible hot Paul Bowles room you couldn't quite see, a room for lunatic expatriate Englishmen who were blind from syphilis caught while fucking their mothers, the film version starring either Lawrence Harvey or Jeremy Irons, one of those actors who just naturally associated with unnatural acts. Mike pushed record, the little red eye came on, and he said, Orpheus on the Orpheum Circuit, into the mic, then pushed stop again. He approached the bed. The coverlet gleamed yellow-orange. The wallpaper, perhaps cream-colored by daylight, had picked up the yellow-orange glow of the coverlet. There was a little night table to either side of the bed. On one was a telephone, black and large and equipped with a dial. The finger holes in the dial looked like surprised white eyes. On the other table was a dish with a plum on it. Mike pushed record and said, That isn't a real plum. That's a plastic plum. He pushed stop again. On the bed itself was a doorknob menu. Mike sidled up one side of the bed, being quite careful to touch neither the bed nor the wall, and picked the menu up. He tried not to touch the coverlet either, but the tips of his fingers brushed it, and he moaned. It was soft in some terrible, wrong way. Nevertheless, he picked the menu up. It was in French. Although it had been years since he had taken the language, one of the breakfast items appeared to be birds roasted in shit. That at least sounds like something the French might eat, he thought, and uttered a wild, distracted laugh. He closed his eyes and opened them. The menu was in Russian. He closed his eyes and opened them. The menu was in Italian. Closed his eyes. Opened them. There was no menu. There was a picture of a screaming little woodcut boy looking back over his shoulder at the woodcut wolf, which had swallowed his left leg up to the knee. The wolf's ears were laid back, and he looked like a terrier with its favorite toy. I didn't see that, Mike thought, and of course he didn't. Without closing his eyes, he saw neat lines of English, each line listing a different breakfast temptation: eggs, waffles, fresh berries, no birds roasted in shit. Still, he turned around and very slowly edged himself out of the little space between the wall and the bed, a space that now felt as narrow as a grave. His heart was beating so hard that he could feel it in his neck and wrists as well as in his chest. His eyes were throbbing in their sockets. 1408 was wrong. Yes, indeed. 1408 was very wrong. Olin had said something about poison gas, and that was what Mike felt like. Someone who has been gassed or forced to smoke strong hashish laced with insect poison. Olin had done this, of course, probably with the active laughing connivance of the security people. Pumped his special poison gas up through the vents. Just because he could see no vents didn't mean the vents weren't there. Mike looked around the bedroom with wide, frightened eyes. There was no plum on the end table to the left of the bed. No plate, either. The table was bare. He turned, started for the door leading back to the sitting room, and stopped. There was a picture on the wall. He couldn't be absolutely sure. In his present state, he couldn't be absolutely sure of his own name. but he was fairly sure that there had been no picture there when he first came in. It was a still life. A single plum sat on a tin plate in the middle of an old plank table. The light falling across the plum and the plate was a feverish yellow-orange. Tango light, he thought. The kind of light that makes the dead get up out of their graves and tango. The kind of light... I have to get out of here, he whispered, and blundered back into the sitting room. He became aware that his shoes had begun to make odd smooching sounds, as if the floor beneath them were growing soft. The pictures on the living room wall were crooked again, and there were other changes as well. The lady on the stairs had pulled down the top of her gown, baring her breasts. She held one in each hand. A drop of blood hung from each nipple. She was staring directly into Mike's eyes and grinning ferociously. Her teeth were filed to cannibal points. At the rail of the sailing ship, the tars had been replaced by a line of pallid men and women. The man on the far left, nearest the ship's bow, wore a brown wool suit and held a derby hat in one hand. His hair was slicked to his brow and parted in the middle. His face was shocked and vacant. Mike knew his name. Kevin O'Malley, this room's first occupant. A sewing machine salesman who had jumped from the room on October of 1910. To O'Malley's left were the others who had died here, all with that same vacant, shocked expression. It made them look related, all members of the same inbred and cataclysmically retarded family. In the picture, where the fruit had been, there was now a severed human head. Yellow-orange light swam off the sunken cheeks, the sagging lips, the upturned glazing eyes, the cigarette parked behind the right ear. Mike blundered towards the door, his feet smooching and now actually seeming to stick a little at each step. The door wouldn't open, of course. The chain hung unengaged. The thumb bolt stood straight up like a clock, hands pointing to 6, but the door wouldn't open. Breathing rapidly, Mike turned from it and waited. That was what it felt like. Across the room to the writing desk. He could see the curtains beside the window. He had cracked open, waving desultorily, but he could feel no fresh air against his face. It was as though the room were swallowing it. He could still hear horns on Fifth, but they were now very distant. Did he still hear the saxophone? If so, the room had stolen its sweetness and melody, and left only an atonal, reedy drone, like the wind blowing across a hole in a dead man's neck, or a pop bottle filled with severed fingers, or, "Stop it," he tried to say, but he could no longer speak. His heart was hammering at a terrible pace. If it went much faster, it would explode. His mini-quarter, faithful companion of many case expeditions, was no longer in his hand. He had left it somewhere. In the bedroom? If it was in the bedroom, it was probably gone by now, swallowed by the room. When it was digested, it would be excreted into one of the pictures. Gasping for breath like a runner nearing the end of a long race, Mike put a hand to his chest, as if to soothe his heart. What he felt in the left breast pocket of his gaudy shirt was the small square shape of the mini-quarter. The feel of it, so solid and known, steadied him a little, brought him back a little. He became aware that he was humming, and that the room seemed to be humming back at him, as if myriad mouths were concealed beneath its smoothly nasty wallpaper. He was aware that his stomach was now so nauseated that it seemed to be swinging in its own greasy hammock. He could feel the air crowding against his ears in soft, coagulating clots, and it made him think of how fudge was when it reached the softball stage. But he was back a little. Enough to be positive of one thing. He had to call for help while there was still time. The thought of Olin smirking, in his deferential New York hotel manager way, and saying, "I told you so," didn't bother him. And the idea that Olin had somehow induced these strange perceptions and horrible fear by chemical means had entirely left his mind. It was the room. It was the goddamned room. He meant to jab out a hand to the old-fashioned telephone, the twin of the one in the bedroom, and snatch it up. Instead, he watched his arm descend to the table in a kind of delirious, slow motion. So like the arm of a diver, he almost expected to see bubbles rising from it. He closed his fingers around the handset and picked it up. His other hand dove, as deliberate as the first, and dialed 0. As he put the handset of the phone against his ear, he heard a series of clicks as the dial spun back to its original position. It sounded like the wheel on Wheel of Fortune. Do you want to spin, or do you want to solve the puzzle? Remember that if you try to solve the puzzle and fail, you will be put out into the snow beside the Connecticut Turnpike and the wolves will eat you. There was no ring in his ear. Instead, a harsh voice simply began speaking. This is 9. 9. This is 9. 9. This is 10. 10. We have killed your friends. Every friend is now dead. This is 6. 6. Mike listened with growing horror, not at what the voice was saying, but at its rasping emptiness. It was not a machine-generated voice, but it wasn't a human voice either. It was the voice of the room. The presence pouring out of the walls and the floor, the presence speaking to him from the telephone, had nothing in common with any haunting or paranormal event he had ever read about. There was something alien here. Not here yet, no. But coming. It's hungry, and your dinner. The phone fell from his relaxing fingers and he turned around. It swung at the end of its cord the way his stomach was swinging back and forth inside him, and he could still hear that voice rasping out of the black. 18! This is now 18! Take cover when the siren sounds. This is 4. 4! He was not aware of taking the cigarette from behind his ear and putting it in his mouth, or of the fumbling the book of matches with the old-fashioned gold-frogged doorman on it, of his bright shirt's right breast pocket. Not aware that, after 9 years, he had finally decided to have a smoke. Before him, the room had begun to melt. It was sagging out of its right angles and straight lines, not into curves, but into strange, Moorish arcs that hurt his eyes. The glass chandelier in the center of the ceiling began to sag like a thick glob of spit. The pictures began to bend, turning into shapes like the windshields of old cars. From behind the glass of the picture by the door leading into the bedroom, the 20s woman with the bleeding nipples and grinning cannibal teeth whirled around and ran back up the stairs, going with the jerky, delirious laugh, knee-pistoning of a vamp in a silent movie. The telephone continued to grind and spit, the voice coming from it now the voice of an electric hair clipper that has learned how to talk. 5. This is 5. Ignore the siren. Even if you leave this room, you can never leave this room. 8. This is 8. The door to the bedroom and the door to the hall had begun to collapse downward, widening in the middle and becoming doorways for beings possessed of unhallowed shapes. The light began to grow bright and hot, filling the room with that yellow-orange glow. Now he could see rips in the wallpaper, black pores that quickly grew to become mouths. The floor sank into a concave arc, and now he could hear it coming. The dweller in the room behind the room, the thing in the walls, the owner of the buzzing voice. 6! The phone screamed. 6! This is goddamn fucking 6! He looked down at the matchbook in his hand, the one he had plucked out of the bedroom ashtray. Funny old doorman, funny old cars with their big chrome grills, and words running across the bottom that he hadn't seen in a long time, because now the strip of abrasive stuff was always on the back. Close cover before striking. Without thinking about it, he no longer could think. Mike Enslin tore out a single match, allowing the cigarette to drop out of his mouth at the same time. He struck the match and immediately touched it to the others in the book. There was a sound, a strong whiff of burning sulfur that went into his head like a whiff of smelling salts, and a bright flare of match heads. And again, without so much as a single thought, Mike held the flaring bouquet of fire against the front of his shirt. It was a cheap thing made in Korea or Cambodia or Borneo, old now, it caught fire at once. Before the flames could blaze up in front of his eyes, rendering the room once more unstable, Mike saw it clearly, like a man who has awakened from a nightmare only to find the nightmare all around him. His head was clear. The strong whiff of sulfur and the sudden rising heat from his shirt had done that much, but the room maintained its insanely Moorish aspect. Moorish was wrong. Not even very close, but it was the only word that seemed to even reach towards what had happened here, what was still happening. He was in a melting, rotting cave, full of swoops and mad tilts. The door to the bedroom had become the door to some sarcophagal inner chamber, and to his left, where the picture of the fruit had been, the wall was bulging outward towards him, splitting open in those long cracks that gaped like mouths, opening on a world from which something was now approaching. Mike Enslin could hear its slobbering, avid breath and smell something alive and dangerous. It smelled a little like the lion house in the flames scorched the undershelf of his chin, banishing thought. The heat rising from his blazing shirt put that waver back into the world, and as he began to smell the crispy aroma of his chest hair starting to fry, Mike again bolted across the sagging rug to the hall door. An insectile, buzzing sound had begun to sweat out of the walls. The yellow-orange light was steadily brightening, as if a hand were turning up an invisible rheostat. But this time, when he reached the door and turned the knob, the door opened. It was as if the thing behind the bulging wall had no use for a burning man. Did not, perhaps, relish cooked meat. A popular song from the 50s suggests that love makes the world go round, but coincidence would probably be a better bet. Rufus Dearborn, who was staying that night in room 1414, up near the elevators, was a salesman for the Singer Sewing Machine Company, in town from Texas to talk about moving up to an executive position. And so it happened that 90 or so years after room 1408's first occupant jumped to his death, another sewing machine salesman saved the life of the man who had come to write about the purportedly haunted room. Or perhaps that is an exaggeration. Mike Enslin might have lived even if no one, especially a fellow on his way back from a visit to the ice machine, had been in the hallway at that moment. Having your shirt catch fire is no joke. And he certainly would have been burned much more severely and extensively had not for Dearborn, who thought fast and moved even faster. Not that Dearborn even or ever remembered exactly what happened. He constructed a coherent enough story for the newspapers and TV cameras. He liked the idea of being a hero very much, and it certainly did no harm to his executive aspirations. And he clearly remembered seeing the man on fire lunge out into the hall. But after that, everything was a blur. Thinking about it was like trying to reconstruct the things you had done during the vilest, deepest drunk of your life. One thing he was sure of, but didn't tell any reporters, because it made no sense, the burning man's scream seemed to grow in volume, as if he were a stereo that was being turned up. He was right there in front of Dearborn, and the pitch of the scream never changed, but the volume most certainly did. It was as if the man were some incredibly loud object that was just arriving here. Dearborn ran down the hall with the full ice bucket in his hand. The burning man, it was just his shirt on fire. I saw that right away, he told reporters. Struck the door opposite the room he had come out of, rebounded, staggered, and fell to his knees. That was when Dearborn reached him. He put his foot on the burning shoulder of the screaming man's shirt and pushed him over onto the hall carpet. He then dumped the contents of the ice bucket onto him. These things were blurred in his memory, but accessible. He was aware that the burning shirt seemed to be casting far too much light. A sweltering yellow-orange light that made him think of a trip he and his brother had made to the Australia outback 2 years before. They had rented an all-wheel drive and had taken off across the Great Australian Desert. The few natives called it the Great Australian Bugger All, the Dearborn brothers discovered. Hell of a trip. Great, but spooky, especially the big rock in the middle, Ayers Rock. They had reached it right around sunset, and the light on its main faces was like this, hot and strange, not really what you thought of as Earthlight at all. He dropped beside the burning man, who was now only the smoldering man, the covered with ice cubes man, and rolled him over to stifle the flames, reaching around to the back of the shirt. When he did, he saw the skin on the left side of the man's neck had gone a smoky, bubbly red, and the lobe of his ear on that side had melted a little, but otherwise... Dearborn looked up, and it seemed, this was crazy, but it seemed the door to the room the man had come out of was filled with the burning light of an Australian sundown, the hot light of an empty place where things no man had ever seen might live. It was terrible, that light, and the low buzzing, like an electric clipper that was trying desperately to speak. But it was fascinating, too. He wanted to go into it. He wanted to see what was behind it. Perhaps Mike saved Dearborn's life as well. He was certainly aware that Dearborn was getting up, as if Mike no longer held any interest for him, and that his face was filled with the blazing, pulsing light coming out of 1408. He remembered this better than Dearborn later did himself. But of course, Rufe Dearborn had not been reduced to setting himself on fire in order to survive. Mike grabbed the cuff of Dearborn's slacks. "Don't go in there," he said in a cracked, smoky voice. "You'll never come out." Dearborn stopped, looking down at the reddening, blistering face of the man on the carpet. "It's haunted," Mike said, and as if the words had been a talisman, the door of room 1408 slammed furiously shut, cutting off the light, cutting off the terrible buzz that was almost words. Rufus Dearborn, one of Singer Sewing Machine's finest, ran down to the elevators and pulled the fire alarm. We're almost there. There's an interesting picture of Mike Enslin in the Treating the Burn Victim, a Diagnostic Approach, the 16th edition of which appeared about 16 months after Mike's short stay in room 1408 of the Hotel Dolphin. The photo shows just his torso, but it's Mike all right. One can tell by the white square on the left side of his chest. The flesh all around it is an angry red, actually blistered into second-degree burns in some places. The white square marks the left breast pocket of the shirt he was wearing that night. The lucky shirt, with his mini-quarter in the pocket. The mini-quarter itself melted around the corners, but it still works, and the tape inside it was fine. It's the things on it which are not fine. After listening to it 3 or 4 times, Mike's agent, Sam Farrell, tossed it into his wall safe, refusing to acknowledge the goose flesh all over his tanned, scrawny arms. In that wall safe the tape has stayed ever since. Farrell has no urge to take it out and play it again, not for himself, not for his curious friends, some of whom would cheerfully kill to hear it. New York publishing is a small community, and word gets around. He doesn't like Mike's voice on the tape. He doesn't like the stuff that the voice is saying. "My brother was actually eaten by wolves one winter on the Connecticut Turnpike. What in God's name is that supposed to mean?" And most of all, he doesn't like the background sounds on the tape. A kind of liquid smooshing that sometimes sounds like clothes churning around in an oversudsed washer, sometimes like one of those old electric hair clippers, and sometimes, weirdly, like a voice. While Mike was still in the hospital, a man named Olin, The manager of the goddamned hotel, if you please, came and asked Sam Farrell if he could listen to that tape. Farrell said no, he couldn't. What Olin could do was take himself on out of the agent's office at a rapid hike and thank God all the way back to the flea bag where he worked that Mike Enslin had decided not to sue either the hotel or Olin for negligence. I tried to persuade him not to go in, Olin said quietly. A man who spent most of his working days listening to tired travelers and petulant guests bitch about everything from the rooms to the magazine selection in the newsstand. He wasn't much perturbed by Farrell's rancor. I tried everything in my power. If anyone was negligent that night, Mr. Farrell, it was your client. He believed too much in nothing. Very unwise behavior. Very unsafe behavior. I would guess he has changed somewhat in that regard. In spite of Farrell's distaste for the tape, he would like Mike to listen to it, acknowledge it, perhaps use it as a pad from which to launch a new book. There is a book in What Happened to Mike. Farrell knows it. Not just a chapter, a 40-page case history, but an entire book. One that might outsell all 3 of the 10 Nights books combined. And of course, he doesn't believe Mike's assertion that he has finished not only with ghost tales, but with all writing. Writers say that from time to time, that's all. The occasional prima donna outburst is part of what makes writers in the first place. As for Mike Enslin himself, he got off lucky, all things considered. And he knows it. He could have been burned much more badly than he actually was, if not for Mr. Dearborn and his bucket of ice. He might have had 20 or even 30 different skin graft procedures to suffer through instead of only 4. His neck is scarred on the left side in spite of the grafts, but the doctors at the Boston Burn Institute tell him the scars will fade on their own. He also knows that the burns, painful as they were in the weeks and months after that night, were necessary. If not for the matches with close cover before striking written on the front, he would have died in 1408, and his end would have been unspeakable. To a coroner, it might have looked like a stroke or a heart attack, but the actual cause of death would have been much nastier. Much nastier. He was lucky in having produced 3 popular books on ghosts and hauntings before actually running afoul of a place that is haunted. This he also knows. Sam Farrell may not believe Mike's life as a writer is over, but Sam doesn't need to. Mike knows it for both of them. He cannot so much as write a postcard without feeling cold all over his skin and being nauseated deep in the pit of his belly. Sometimes, just looking at a pen or a tape recorder will make him think, the pictures were crooked. I tried to straighten the pictures. He doesn't know what this means. He can't remember the pictures or anything else from room 1408, and he is glad. That is a mercy. His blood pressure isn't so good these days. His doctor told him that burn victims often develop problems with their blood pressure and put him on medication. His eyes trouble him. His ophthalmologist told him to start taking Ocuvites. He has consistent back problems. His prostate has gotten too large, but he can deal with these things. He knows he isn't the first person to escape 1408 without really escaping. Olin tried to tell him. But it isn't all bad. At least he doesn't remember. Sometimes he has nightmares. Quite often, in fact. Almost every goddamn night, in fact. But he rarely remembers them when he wakes up. A sense that things are rounding off at the corners, mostly, melting the way the corners of his mini-quarter melted. He lives on Long Island these days, and when the weather is good, he takes long walks on the beach. The closest he has ever come to articulating what he does remember about the 70-odd, very odd, minutes in 1408 was on one of those walks. It was never human, he told the incoming waves in a choked, halting voice. Ghosts. At least ghosts were once human. That thing in the wall, though. That thing. Time, may improve it. He can and does hope for that. Time may fade it, as it will fade the scars on his neck. In the meantime, though, he sleeps with the lights on in his bedroom, so he will know at once where he is when he wakes up from the bad dreams. He has had all the phones taken out of the house. At some point, just below the place where his conscious mind seems able to go, he is afraid of picking the phone up and hearing a buzzing, inhuman voice spit. "This is 9! 9! We have killed your friends! Every friend is now dead!" And when the sun goes down on clear evenings, he pulls every shade and blind and drape in the house. He sits like a man in a dark room until his watch tells him the light, even the last fading glow along the horizon, must be gone. He can't stand the light that comes at sunset, that yellow deepening to orange, like light in the Australian desert. And that is 1408. That is one of my favorite Stephen King stories of all fucking time. You know that haunting, like, distressing feeling you get at the realization of something terrible. Like you feel weepy, like you want to cry. You don't want to scream. It's a haunting feeling. When I first read that story, the way that story ended made me cry in that way. Tears streaming down my face. And now that I've shared that with some of you, I would still recommend reading it yourselves. I stumbled in a few places. But one of the key and biggest aspects of it is that the movie can never, ever, ever, ever hope to capture the horror of that story. And the movie they made did a shit job of doing so. It became so fucking hokey and cliche. The part of the movie I think I hated the most was where he got out of the room, went home, did a bunch of other shit in his life, and then the world collapsed around him, and it's like, no, actually, you're still in the room. Fucking campfire ghost story-ass goddamn trash. That movie is terrible. It's a terrible movie. It does not convey the horror of the book at all. It's hokey and worthless. How are you guys? By the way, Lich King, thank you. The imp is really proud of the new name. The movie starred, I want to say it was Morgan Freeman and John Cusack. John Cusack played Mike Enslin, and in the most insane casting choice, not because I think Morgan Freeman isn't a stellar actor, it's a complete different fucking vibe from the character in the fucking book. Morgan Freeman plays Mr. Olin, the hotel manager. You know, the pudgy, nervous hotel manager? They changed him from being like the nervous character to someone who has nothing but confidence when on screen. The reason I don't like the hokiness is because the story is better. The story conveys an otherworldly, eldritch horror. It does an amazing job building it up and then setting the scene, and I think one of my favorite, like, understated parts of it are how even the narration that's like, oops, sorry about that, even the narration going over, like, you know, the semi-omniscient narrator, right? That's, like, talking about, like, his inner thoughts and, like, other things. The narration takes on a unhinged, off-kilter quality, where it starts listing a bunch of things, like, it just goes off the rails. Now, there are some lines in there I'm not a fan of. I didn't comment on them because I wanted to maintain the pacing, but there was the R word in there. Not a fan. This book is old. Not a fan of the word. I personally don't like it, and I don't use it. I used to use it a long time ago. I thought it was Morgan Freeman. Is it Samuel L. Jackson? I had painted it in my mind that it was Morgan Freeman. Are you guys sure? Is it Samuel L. Jackson? Listen, I get all my actors confused. I also don't watch movies. Look, it's a product of its time. Stephen King is a good man. You know how I know? Because he's actively dunked on fucking J.K. Rowling on the... He's trans rights. The man has gone through a lot of crazy shit. He's been writing for a long time. Sensibilities change, and when they do, you adapt and you adjust and you change as well, and he has. Oh my goodness. How long were we reading that? Jesus Christ. I need a sip. I am so parched. Only an hour? Really? Man, I'm gonna need a fucking lozenge. It is 8 p.m. on Halloween. Yes, she did. She complimented Stephen King, or mentioned him as one of her inspirations, and then he said something about trans rights, and she promptly deleted the tweet that she made and then blocked him. A heinous, fucking twisted lunatic. Like one of my least favorite people to ever exist. My brother was eaten by wolves one night on the New Jersey Turnpike. Sorry, it was the Connecticut Turnpike. Even if you leave this room, you can never leave this room. This is 6. This is goddamn fucking 6. Ah. Hello. I feel like I've been having a lot of issues with my fucking control schemes lately. The facial expressions and whatnot. There's a tree behind me? Oh no! What will I do? Yeah. Anyway. I want to poke around this map, but there's not really much to see, I don't think. See, I would love to do more, like, book readings. The problem is it's, like, actually very straining on my voice, especially if I want to give different characters different voices. I can't imagine audiobooks are all done in one take, you know? Are these boxing gloves? What is the... What are these? Is this like Punch-Out? Why do I have a boxing glove? Is there like a punching bag somewhere? I don't care anymore. I've immediately lost interest. I'm getting all tangled, though. And of course, as a result, I have to relocate everyone. Because otherwise, I can't actually reposition. I hate the camera in VR chat. I really do. It's one of my least favorite aspects of it because of how much time you spend woo, 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 fucking futzing around with it. And you all wonder, you like this Dutch angle? That's what we're doing now, Dutch angles. Get over here. I said, get over here. There you are. Is that a fucking ducky? Why is there a fucking anime Dakimura? This is supposed to be Spooky Map. Minesweeper? There's no way I'm about to fucking win Minesweeper. Just by randomly... Damn it! I randomly clicked for a while and nearly won that game down there. Well. We go back to the beach with the glowy water. He spent 70 minutes, not 17, 70. 70. So about an hour and 10 minutes he was in 1408. The camera's crooked, or is it just the room? Oh. I'm gonna be honest with you, chap. That spooky energy. I told you, the spectral energy is diminishing. For those who weren't here earlier, I've been very scarce this year. The spider has been tired. It takes a lot to maintain a normal form during non-spooky times, and I've expended almost all of my spectral energy. It's been hard to keep things up after getting stabbed in the back, and I know who's responsible. And if they show their face again, we'll see how things go. But I just can't keep this up anymore. I will be back, like always, every year. But I can't be here all the time anymore. The imp's not aware of it yet. He thinks he's just taking on a, shall we say, partnership role at the stream. But I've gotten to know him well enough to know that he's a good fit. He's a good replacement. Bring them to justice one day? Well, I think they're a coward. They've been hiding ever since it turned out the stabbing didn't work. I'm going to miss you. Like I said, I'll be back. I'm always back. Every year, every spooky season, I will return. But for now, I think it's time for something new. You'll see me one more time. One more time. At the end of November. I don't have a specific date yet, but when I know, you will know. I expended pretty much my last reserves of spectral energy to be here with you all tonight on the spookiest of nights. Helps that I get a little bit back. Buy one, get one free. It's Spooky Month. It's the spooky day of Spooky Month. The spooky energies are at their strongest. It allows me to stick around a little longer. You need your energy to fight Mariah Carey and the Christmas tide. Bold of you to assume I do that by myself, all right? We've got, like, the spooky Avengers over here. There's, like, Jack Skellington, I don't know. Look, that's the only character I could think of for spooky. Maybe, like, the other spooky characters, fucking, I don't know, Ghostface, Mike Myers. The Thing. Who the fuck is Bones Malone? But anyway, one moment, if you don't mind. As unfortunate as it is, another spooky month has come and gone. So until we meet again, one last time, stay spooky.